been a while since we've met, so good to meet again, and welcome two new board members to this committee. Welcome, and off we go. So the Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee meeting generally meets on items of water and hydro-related topics. Imagine that. The title is very apropos. So today we are on Zoom once again, and just a reminder that if you'd like to provide comments, to raise your hand and we'll call on you. And
that's *9.
*9 to do so. So with that, we're going to open it up for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. *9. Hearing and seeing none, we will jump right on into it. So, item number 1 is approve the minutes of the September 16th meeting, and being that our board members were not present at that meeting, probably don't have a ton of comment, but anything strike your...
Do we need to, I mean, these meetings, it's hard to tell what was really discussed. I mean, do we need to adopt them if we weren't there, or how does that work?
I don't think we need to adopt those. You guys weren't present at that meeting.
I think for the official record, though, the meetings probably need to be...
They have to be adopted.
At least
accepted. They have to accepted.
Okay,
sure.
I'm
with
you.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. And then the item number 2, water supply update. So we have a PowerPoint for this, and I'll walk us through this slowly. We're going to turn on the shared screen. There you go, right there.
And we don't get copies of this, or?
We can provide copies. The thing is, I try not to give these out a week ahead of time because so much changes in a week with the water supply.
Right.
So by waiting, in fact, some of the slides I updated this morning. So this is going to be the most current information we have, but I'm glad to share it.
Okay. Because I go to other meetings and I use this information.
Well, and I would add to it that the water supply updates that you get at the board meeting are now on the new webpage and they're working.
That's what I found out.
So you can always go there as well, or just let me know.
And those are like at the previous board meeting date?
Yes, and they're updated once a week, every Thursday.
Every Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so next slide. All right, so I think we're all pretty familiar with looking at these slides, but I'll walk us through it quickly. So basically, the blue shaded area is our 134-year average precipitation from the Bowman Lake Reporting Station. The yellow line that you see there, or kind of I guess yellow, maybe orange, hard to tell on this screen, is the 2019-2020 precipitation numbers, and then the red line is this year. And boy, you can see we were really suffering at the beginning of this year, and then we had that storm in late January that really gave us a boost. So we're still behind though, and we're only at 58% of average at 22 inches. The good news is we're still in winter, so there's room for this to improve, and we'll continue to do our rain dances and hope for the best.
Do we only do the 134-year average, or do we also track like a 7-year average?
So for this particular station, we have 134 years of data, and so we use it. The next slide, go ahead and move to the next.
Okay.
We had some changes in our coordinated operating agreement with PG&E, which gave us a little more supply. So we only utilized the data since that change took place. That's why this is only an 8-year average, as opposed to a 130-year average.
It gave us more supply, for more storage in our reservoir,
so,
allowing us to keep more water in the reservoir.
So previously, Rollins, they had, 20,000 acre-feet or 30,000 acre-feet of storage. Down to 10 now. So,
they have 10 now.
Yeah, so we basically gained 20,000 acre-feet of storage in Rollins, which is awesome. But we updated these slides to account for that. So our current reservoir storage is at 172,000 acre-feet, basically 173 when you round. That is 87% of our 8-year average, which is not a horrible number, and I like to focus on that upward turn. And the reason I want to focus on that for a moment, on the red line there, by the way, is because the last round of storms we had was impressive, but more impressive was the snow level. It was a very low snow level. We got a lot of snow out of it. And so that number you see there doesn't reflect that runoff yet. It's all up there in snowpack, which is great news. It's really gonna help us, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the snowpack slide. But, basically, we're at 87% of our 8-year average, which is 64% of our total capacity. Got some catch-up to do, but it's turning. All right, next slide.
Oh, just 15. So that includes 14 and 15, which were extreme drought years.
That's correct. The shaded average does, yes.
Right. The snowpack evaporating, or is it just holding?
For now, it's holding. I will say that we had a little bit of a warm storm come in behind that, rained on some of the lower elevation snow, which is even better, because it's soaked in. That snow was really dry. It was sugar, it was powder. So now we've got a little water content added into it, and should only get better. We're gonna move on to some precipitation that's coming for this next week that will hopefully even add to that. So here's the state's reservoirs. I threw this up there to kind of compare ours with theirs. The thing I like to reflect on, and I apologize, this is a little blurry and hard to read, but we'll walk through it real quickly. Basically, the Southern California reservoirs are all in pretty decent shape, with the exception of San Luis, but that's pretty much heavily managed through the Delta. New Melones and Don Pedro are both stellar, 99 and 100%, so they're in really good shape. However, where we're really suffering is Shasta is only at 70%, Oroville at 54, Folsom at 57, and Trinity at 72. So those really do need some improvement. We're hopeful that the rest of winter focuses its efforts on Northern California, but who knows at this point. So the reason that's important is regardless of what our storage is, and if we come out smelling like a rose, great, statewide, they're gonna look at all the reservoirs, and it's gonna determine the state's efforts moving forward based on their own reservoirs as well. So you always have to keep that in mind.
And this is the data from PDEC?
Yes, correct. Okay, next slide. Now, I strung together a few of these drought monitors for covering basically the last year to kind of show you how this has progressed. This slide is from May 12th of 2020, and you can see that we were already in moderate to severe drought through most of Northern California. Next slide. And then September 8th of 2020, that had expanded down to the southern half of California, and things weren't improving much, which you wouldn't expect them to during the summer. Next. But this is where it got really troubling. January 26th, we should have already been receiving lots of rain and snow, but we really hadn't. And the drought monitor reflects that with big portions of the state moving into extreme drought. However, that was January 26th. The next slide is from February 2nd. You can see what that last round of storms did. Basically kind of reversed that trend. It didn't pull us out of drought by any means, but at least it has reversed the trend somewhat, and you can see that in Nevada County, we went from that severe drought category back into a moderate drought category. And we hope that trend continues. We can get quite a bit of precipitation in the month of February and March. So time will tell.
Don't we have a big storm coming in?
I'll get to that here in just a second. In fact, I think it's the
Yeah.
next slide.
Yeah,
Very
okay.
good.
Segues to do it.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You guys do this for me. Okay, so this slide here does show that we had very nice weather this weekend, but the storm track is changing. Obviously, we had a little rain this morning, and for the next week, it shows that we're moving into a cooler, wetter pattern. Next slide. And it does show that the Grass Valley area is expected to receive another 1 to 2 inches of rain by the end of the week. That's great news. And even better news, next slide, is more snowpack for the summit, another 12 to 18 inches for Donner Summit. I have seen the latest forecast, actually next slide, shows a little bit less than they forecasted the day before. It's dropping a little bit, but regardless, we're still in a wet pattern. This slide here is from the Weather Underground, and the blue shaded area in the middle of the slide there, that is the forecasted rain. And so you see some on the way, but the good news I like to reflect on is not only do you see a storm for Thursday, Friday, another one Saturday, but it doesn't just disappear after that. Later on in the next week, we get some more on the way, which is great news. know, that's another good point, is we can, it's feast or famine, right? There's certain years where we have those atmospheric rivers when it's 6 inches of rain in one storm. Those are troubling for us. We like the water, but it does damage too. These, if we can get a moderate 1 to 2 inches every storm, this is awesome. They just need to keep coming, that's the problem.
For a rain dance.
Yes. Next slide. Okay, so this is, one of the most important slides. So the district snowpack acts as one of our largest reservoirs. We have our physical dams and water storage there, but our snowpack actually is one of our largest reservoirs in that as we move into the spring and summer months, our reservoirs are supplying the water, but as the temperatures warm up, that snowpack slowly starts to melt, runs down the hill and runoff, and supplies our reservoirs and our direct diversion points as we move into the irrigation season. So it is a very important part for us. This particular slide shows the data from January 26th, and you can see the snowpack was really suffering. It was only at 55% of average in water content, and this is before the storms rolled in. Next slide. Shows the data after those storms passed through. And you can see it was quite a shot in the arm with the snowpack. We're now at 85% of average, and I hope that continues. What I will say is that the weather was rather nasty, and so we couldn't get to all of these stations. So we got to, which one, Tor, specifically?
We got to 3 on the 26th, and then on the 4th, we finished the last 2.
So we took a few averages from the 2-4 data and spread it across the sites here to come up with this 85% average. Regardless, it's a huge change. It's positive, and we're going to hope that continues. So this is probably the first time you all have seen this slide. So the blue bars are your historical average, and the green bars are where we're at this year.
And where is Weber Peak and Weber Lake in relation? So these are both our facilities, and so they're
snow courses, they're not a facility.
I did ours, yes, but they feed our reservoirs.
No, Weber Lake, we are still cooperator with the state, and since we're in the region, we sample for the state at Weber Lake. Weber Peak, we do benefit from the runoff into the watershed. So the Weber Lake is just a course we pick up as well. But we base all our information off of the 5-course averaging as far as what runoff has been produced over the years, and that's what the data comes from.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks.
Okay, this slide here, generally this time of year we try to project out where we're going to be. And so what you're going to see here, once again, the shaded area is our 8-year average. The solid red line is where we've come so far this year, and then the dashed red line is our forecast. Basically what we've done is taken the snowpack and the runoff at 70%, got us to where we are on the solid red line, and then towards now projected out from that point 100% of our runoff, 75% of our runoff is in blue, and 50% of our runoff is in, I guess that's yellow. So the takeaway from all of that, though, is that in the red, we end up at roughly 260,000 acre feet in storage. The blue line at 75%, we end up at 234,000 acre feet. And then the yellow line is 215,000 acre feet. When you take all of those numbers, can you go to the next slide for me, please?
Can I ask you a question about the last slide? There was a February snow survey, but isn't April the survey that we determined?
Correct. So, yes, this is February. We have 2 more snow surveys to go.
This is 2020 though, right?
Yeah, we should have updated the slide.
That's incorrect.
Oh, it's not last year. This is this year's data. Okay.
I just noticed
that was
my popped it up there.
Yeah, okay. That was my confusion.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry about that.
that's all right.
Oh, okay, cool. We're gonna fight. Okay, so this slide here where we talked about each one of those projections is important. The problem with where we're at right now is this time of year, we generally send out our irrigation water change order forms, and we make our declaration of surplus water, okay? It's always troublesome for us because we're so early in the year and we're so early in winter season. Many times we get enough precipitation, it's a no-brainer call. Years like this, it becomes very difficult. The reason this forecast is so important is now we know that even if we only get 50% of runoff from here on out, we're still going to have 215,000 acre-feet of water. When you go into our drought contingency plan, and I apologize, it's very small, but you can see the windows in which we operate. 215,000 acre-feet is still only a voluntary stage in our drought plan. So we appear to be looking much, much better, and I'm feeling a little bit better about the coming season. With that said, though, we're still planning on dry year operation. So, again, as I mentioned, a normal water year requires 235,000 acre-feet of available water. We're currently at 172,000 acre-feet in storage. Our snow survey results show 85% of average, and so there's more winter to come. We expect to add to those totals. So we think from here on out, things are only going to get better and pull us even further out of that drought contingency plan. Should it go the other way, we are still prepared for dry year operations. I highly doubt we're going to make any shoulder season water available. Shoulder season water is, a lot of times we get requests for people starting their water before April 15th and getting that irrigation water early. In a slim water year, we don't do that. We just don't have the availability. Additionally, come the end of the year, we have to reanalyze whether winter and fall water will even be available. That's always dependent upon how much water we have. So those are not guarantees and things we watch closely and make that determination.
I have a question. Oh,
yes.
Rich, did you have a question?
Yeah, to make that determination, you come to this committee first and then to the full board for their recommendation.
That's correct, yes. So two items. One, surplus water, we usually come to this committee, get the blessing, and then notify the board. And then the fall, winter water comes to this committee. A lot of times it's pretty straightforward, doesn't have to go to the board, but we like to keep the full board informed.
So the second part would be that, and this is not factoring in any FERC requirements. When that becomes real, then
This
you'll
does
have
not
to...
factor in future FERC requirements, so if you're referring to the new FERC license, if that gets put in place this year, no, it does not factor in those.
I think I just wanted to point out how it really decimates this number.
I don't know about that.
We plan on showing that in the future. So we're actively working behind the scenes to take these slides, update them with where we currently are, and then start another slide deck that shows how we would be with the FERC flows, so we can compare and contrast. But we don't have enough information yet to throw those under the wall.
Right, it's a little early.
Yeah.
And then the unimpaired flows
Yeah, that's
demand
another tough
will
one.
take a whole bunch more out of it.
Right.
So do we need to start seeing that also to start making preparation?
Not a bad idea, but I think we need to see where the conversations with the state are headed. But yeah, I appreciate that. Those are all things that are worrisome in the back of your mind, and we're trying to actively at least start projecting those to see how they would truly affect them.
I have a question also.
Yes.
You mentioned shoulder season water. You mentioned it's both before the irrigation season and after the irrigation season.
Correct.
Do we have to make a drop dead decision now? I mean, can we be more nimble and see if it does improve, or what if we get storms back to back for the next month or so, and
Yes.
we just skyrocket with our storms?
We can be flexible. But I put these out there, and I gave this update to the Ag Commission as well. And I like to give them the notification that it's not guaranteed, and it may or may not happen this year due to the drought conditions. So I always like to give the people the warning.
A realistic, sure.
Yeah. So having said that, though, our water order and change forms have been delayed. I'm at the point now where I'd like to start mailing those out. We're already behind a couple of weeks. I think we have enough water and forecasted supply to allow us to do that. In a drought year like in 2015, what we did is we sent out those change forms, but we allowed for decreases only. We have enough water in our coffers now to allow for decreases and minor increases as well. So we're going to send those out, get folks updated. This also allows them to update their crop acreage report, what kind of crop they're doing, all of that. So it's very important information to us. helps us to, complete the ag water management plan, things like that. So we definitely need to get those forms out.
Do a lot of people what's the trend of increasing delivery requests?
You know, I have slides for that.
Oh, okay.
It's not huge, and in fact, over the last few years, we've had more decreases than increases.
That's what I would suspect.
And we'll get to that, in the updates at the end here, so. I'd like to put this,
Very well.
yes, you guys are just, doing this for me. The last bullet there under potential dry year actions is the surplus water declaration. I'd like to continue to put that on hold until at least we get the March snow survey results in, and then we'll feel a little more comfortable about that declaration if it's even possible.
So that'd be April 1st. We wait until April 1st before we make that surplus?
No, we generally would call that as early as we can, and the reason being is there are a handful of customers who, count on that surplus water declaration for their supply. Per water code regulations, if we don't make that declaration, we cannot give them water. So we need to give them as much lead time as we can if that.
So if we could do it good.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
On the surplus water. How many customers does that really affect? I had thought that it affected some of our larger customers, but it doesn't. And so what's the real true impact of that?
It's a great question, and during the last drought, we struggled with this topic. There are outside district customers, and there are outside customers.
That's what I just learned.
The exclusionary islands within the interior boundaries of the district are generally covered either by a railroad commission order, or they're being supplied municipally, like the city of Grass Valley City, Nevada City. During the last drought, we did not cut those folks off. We only cut off the folks that were outside the external boundaries of the district.
How many are those? Not very many.
It's not a huge amount, and I have the list, and I can get you the total,
Okay.
but it is not a lot of,
Pretty
not
minor
a lot of
impact.
customers, and it's not a lot of water.
Yeah.
So, but we are actively updating that list so that we know exactly who's in, out, and what kind of supply they're getting.
They're required, yeah, because
I also must say that, because the city of Nevada City and the city of Grass Valley utilize our water for treatment and drinking, I highly doubt the state would allow us to
Right.
just cut off their supply.
That's absolutely,
It would get,
especially with the right to water as
it
well.
would get interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to inform this committee that, we're gonna hold off on that surplus water declaration until we feel a little bit more comfortable, and what I plan on doing is to take it to the full board. We'll let everybody hear it all at once. That's okay, right?
I like that.
Last on this slide deck here is the potential state mandated drought actions. As I mentioned earlier, our own specific reservoirs that are important to us are one thing, but you have to look at the entire state, because as we learned in the 2014-2015 drought, if the state is suffering as a whole, they may implement conditions on us, regardless of what our water supply is, that say you're going to implement your drought action plan, even if your supply is abundant enough that you don't need to. We're going to make you do it, because everybody needs to conserve statewide. That may happen again. It may not. We don't know. The state also curtailed our water rights during the last drought. That may also happen again. So we have to be prepared for that.
And those are the terms, this is term 91?
So they went much deeper than term 91. Term 91, they always do. We're pretty used to that.
But we're not subject to that, are we? It's only for water that supplies to the state water project.
So we only have, I think, there's one, maybe two rights that have term 91 in them. One, yes.
One right?
It doesn't affect us because it's at Bowman Powerhouse, and we have the subsequent, higher priority right for the diversion into the Bowman Foley Canal.
So, but during the last drought, the state first went back to water rights down to 1927 and curtailed those rights and said you could no longer capture water under those rights, and then even went further and went back to 1903. And then
But not to us, not on us.
Oh, they tried, yeah, they
Well,
tried.
they try, but they can't because we don't contribute to
Well,
the state
here's
water
the
project.
weird part, is the time in which they did that, I think, was like late July. And by then, most of those locations, we had already captured all the runoff that was available. It didn't hurt us that bad. If they do that again and they do it earlier in the year, it could definitely affect us. What I will say is that by the state going into the 1903 and beyond, you're now diving into the pre-1914 rights, which were developed before statehood. And they got sued for that.
Yeah.
And they basically said, well, wait a minute, you don't have to abide by those, it's just a recommendation. So, who knows where it would head if
Yeah.
we go down that road again, but we have to be prepared just in case. Okay, next slide. Oh, sorry. So, we already looked at this, but basically, this is just a reiteration of what our drought contingency plan has in it. And then the last slide is our treated water conservation.
So I have a question
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
on the contingency plan.
Yes, sir.
Does that need to be updated?
Yes. So the drought contingency plan, is part of the Ag and Urban Water Management Plan,
So will
which
be.
we are updating currently, and so we plan on, getting the updates folded into those documents.
Are you tightening down lower supplies, lower amounts?
We have adjusted the trigger zones. Here's the problem, is that the new state mandates say that your drought contingency plan has to have 6 stages in it now. And they have to have specific actions at each stage. And the reason they're doing that is because, again, during a drought period, the state wants to be able to say, all water agencies implement your drought contingency plan and implement it at stage 3. So that's why all of our drought contingency plans have to have the same stages in it, because they don't want to say, implement stage 3, but stage 3 for NID is very different than stage 3 PCWA. So,
Broad brush.
yes, exactly. So we are updating this to have 6 stages, and that's going to skew the numbers a bit. It's not going to be an apples-to-apples comparison anymore, but Tor and I are working together to try to do what makes the most sense for us. Basically, our drought contingency plan is based upon the minimum amount of water of carryover we need year after year, which is roughly 78,000 acre-feet. That's what we've determined is the drop-dead amount we need to carry over come October for the next year for basic public health and safety.
Right. And that may change.
It may change because that includes environmental waters, dead storage, all of those things. So as those change, we will have to update this plan.
So as directors, we should be looking, because the drought hardship committee,
Yes,
we need to be looking at candidates to fill that.
that's correct. Yeah. And we may be reaching out to you to update that. Some of our members of that committee are now board members. So we'll obviously have to pick these people.
Oh, tell me about that committee. Was that a public committee, or?
So as part of the WHO committee, if we go into a drought where there are mandatory reductions and regulations, we form a drought hardship committee, and folks who have a hardship on the cutbacks on water can come to that committee, let their voices be heard, and then the committee makes a recommendation to the board whether or not we should supply them water or not.
Oh, and you were on it last time, is that
Yep.
what I'm understanding? On these 6 stages of drought, do they give, guidance, does the state give guidance on what each of these stages should represent relative to your district? And
They
the policy?
do, yes. And we'll get into that when we review the Ag and Urban Water Management Plan. But yes, that's their goal, is to make a more uniform drought contingency plan statewide.
Well, also that's more considered of the variety of, state situations. I mean, they wouldn't give us the same drought contingency they would give Imperial County. I mean, I think that.
Actually, they kind of do.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, there's,
One size fits all is usually the.
And they didn't learn from last drought? I would be surprised if they didn't change anything from last drought.
so basically what they're asking you to do is to look at your supply and then spread it over 6 stages. And what they do is they give you the percentage of supply. If you have only a limited supply, you're at 20%, 30%. Basically, each stage goes up in percentage.
Yeah.
When you get to stage 6, if your supply is 50% or less, that's what stage 6 is.
Right.
And it's the uniform percentages across the state.
10% of 50,000 is a lot different than 10% of 300,000.
Yes, correct. So in that regard, yes, it's
Yeah.
customized based on your supply.
That's okay. Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Okay. This is the last slide on the water supply update. Basically, the January number is not on here because we just started, but basically it's going to be a little dot right there. And we reduced our usage in January by 1% as compared to 2013. considering how dry and warm January was, it doesn't surprise me. But, we'll see how it tracks the rest of the year. The black line you see there was, 2020. And you can see we did a pretty good job most of the year, but we had such a hot and dry fall, we bounced out of that 2013 window for a little while there. So in summary, things have improved greatly, that's the good news. Staff is gonna go ahead and mail out to our ag water customers and get those change forms rolling, so we can get the ag water season moving. If we don't mail those now, we run in jeopardy of getting bills out on time and allowing our ag water customers to pay for their bills by the April 1st cutoff. Get that 5% discount, which is important to them. And then the surplus water declaration is yet to come, but we will come back to the committee for that, or to the board for that, so more to come. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, that's very, I like that, that was
Good.
fun.
questions from the public? Oh, yeah. Any questions from the public? Going once. Star nine. Going twice. Oh. Okay. The next item, request for water service from Deer Creek Railroad Commission order.
You're gonna have John take.
Yeah, I think Gray went to get it. All right, I'll try to walk us through this. This is a very involved topic.
What I'll do is we'll put you just sort of here at the edge of my table. All right. Just as long as I'm not in the middle of the group.
No. Well, you decided to show up. Most people, in fact.
Well, I know.
No, we'll just put
Those
you.
are the smart people.
There you go.
Okay, so, the request for water service from Deer Creek Railroad Commission order. So a little bit of background and history first. The Railroad Commission order was the, agency that made the determination for water rights in the state before we had a State Water Resources Control Board. So, that's where the term Railroad Commission order comes from. But basically, the background on this is, when the district was formed in the early 1920s, our forefathers went out and shopped for water conveyance, water rights facilities wherever they could. And this is one particular area where the district went out and had discussions with PG&E, and in 1927 came to an agreement that we would take over PG&E's facilities from the Deer Creek Powerhouse down. It would come with all of the canals, the conveyance structures, and the water rights. The deal was, though, that that agreement came with an obligation of the district to provide those customers that were already customers of PG&E. We were now obligated to take on those customers and provide them water in the future, basically in perpetuity. That was part of the agreement. The struggle comes in that it made the determination of who would be supplied based on their location to the historic canal. And basically, the contract, it says in it right here, it says, the obligations resting upon the party of the first party, that's basically NID, to supply water from the said system hereby conveyed to all of the territory, both within and without the boundaries of NID, that may reasonably be served by the aforementioned system. Reasonably is a very hard term to determine. So, the district has had to review many of these cases one by one to see what was reasonably served and what was not. And I can walk you through how we've done that on this particular case on maps, and I'll do that here in just a second. But
I have a question. In that, can we get a copy of that agreement? That'd be very interesting.
Sure.
And then my next question is, did they provide a boundary of that existing system at that time?
So, they did, and we'll get to that. It's on the map.
It's on this map.
Yes.
I don't see the boundary of it.
It just shows the canals that were included in the agreement. This agreement actually lists the canals by name that were included.
And that's these canals here?
That's correct.
Only these canals?
only those canals. Those were the canals that were in existence at the time we took over the agreement. So if we can go to the map slide, Pam, I would appreciate that.
And where did it start? We're from the Deer Creek,
Deer Creek Powerhouse.
Deer Creek Power.
The outlet of the Deer Creek Powerhouse. Okay, so I'm gonna walk y'all through these maps. So, and they're a little bit busy, but bear with me here. So basically, these maps show a number of things. Let me get you oriented first. These shaded parcels here are Mr. Pay's parcels. He's one of the gentlemen, Mr. John Pay right here. Say hi. He showed up with us today. And then Andrew Wilkinson's parcels are down here. Those two lighter colored ones. Those are the two gentlemen that are requesting water service from us today. They have requested service from us in the past and have been denied, but I'll walk you through the reasons why and some of the new information that Mr. Wilkinson has provided us. So if we can scroll back up again. So the red line that you see, I'm so bounced here, but this red line here is the historic Cascade Canal system at the time we took it over. The shaded area here, closer to the lake, that is the area where we have historically said, yes, all of those people get water from this canal. It's downhill from the canal, and so you can expect that reasonably they would have been served water from this facility in 1927.
This is only raw water, correct?
Only raw water, correct. I should state, though, the agreement includes treated water because at the time in 1927, the raw water was used for domestic purposes. So this is both. It's just that we don't have a lot of treated water facilities up here. We'll get to that in a second. So that is historically how the district has adjudicated these. It's basically anything that was on the downhill side of the old historic canal, we gave them water. Anything that was on the uphill side, we usually said no because you generally weren't pumping water in 1927. Next, oh, hold on, I can do the next slide, right? Oh, I can't.
No.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so this next map here shows you a couple of things. This red line that dives down right here is a historic canal that Mr. Wilkinson has provided to the district that was part of the Deer Creek system.
How do we know that?
There's a map, and we'll get to it here in a second. But basically, the issue at hand is that is a historic canal of the Deer Creek system, but it wasn't operating at the time we took the system over.
It's a looped canal?
It's abandoned.
It's abandoned. It was abandoned when we took it. It is not looped. There's some discrepancy on exactly where it ran, but the maps show it generally in this area, so I wanted to...
It's a corridor.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then the blue line that you see here is basically the topo line that shows basically anything on this side of that blue line is higher in elevation. Anything on this side is lower in elevation, which feasibly from that canal, you probably could have served those folks downhill from there, okay? And as you'll see, that line covers into Wilkinson's property and Mr. Pay's property as well. So both of those properties are on the downhill side in portion.
At the lower end of it.
Yes,
Of this abandoned canal.
correct. Good.
Of the topo line.
Of the topo line. So the abandoned canal stopped right here. But theoretically, topography-wise, they're on the downhill side. They could have got water down around here.
This is the reasonably could have terminology, which
Yeah.
gets a little squishy.
You're right.
I
Next map, please. Now, to add to all of this struggle is, you're all familiar with all of the shaded area. I've already covered that. But the new blue line that you see is our current infrastructure. And so now we have pressurized raw water pipes and treated water pipes that go right through the middle of Mr. Pay's property. And so from an engineering standpoint, we can very easily provide them water. In fact, when we built the pipes, we put in manifolds and stub-outs to provide them water.
there you go.
So it all comes down to an interpretation of what is reasonably served.
Well, we must have thought so if we provided stub outs for them.
Well, there's a whole nother side to this that we didn't get into. The district was, I don't know what, maybe 4 years ago now, maybe 5, was going to annex in this section of our service area. It makes sense, our pipes go through it, it's the only way these folks are gonna get water is from NID.
Is this an interior
This
exclusionary?
is exterior, so we were gonna do a sphere of influence adjustment and fold these folks in. We ran into a few snags, and we need to complete the plan for water and determine what our real water budget is to determine if we can serve this area in the future, so that got put on hold.
So the snags are the actual supply numbers
Correct.
Supply
and
numbers.
demand numbers that.
And so it was at the request of the county and LAFCO that we put that on hold, and we actively engaged in the raw water master plan at the time. This was in early 18.
Okay.
So how much water is being requested?
So, I don't know for Mr. Wilkinson, he's got these fairly small parcels down here, I don't think he needs a ton of water. Basically, he's concerned with fire danger and whatnot, and as well as just general water irrigation. Mr. Fay, and I know, he can probably speak for himself at this point, he's got quite a bit of land up here, and I know some of it wants to be developed, and so he's looking to get treated water for those parcels. Is that correct, Mr. Fay?
Yes, we'd like to have treated water on the, northern 320 acres. This is where all the roads are there at the intersection.
So you're Mr. Pay?
Yes, let me check.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know who.
So we're just talking treated water or both?
Both, yeah.
And what's the request of, like, water? How much?
So I don't know that they've officially got an amount yet, but basically they're just trying to say, yes, we can serve you. They haven't even made it to that point yet.
So we don't have an actual number.
We don't have an actual
We
number.
should have an estimate, because we can't estimate if we can serve them if we don't know.
Well,
how
here's
much
the
they
deal,
need.
here's the problem. So the Railroad Commission order says within it that we are only obligated to serve 1 inch, 1 miner's inch, or 1 5/8-inch meter connection. So that's what the limitation would be.
Oh,
So it's not a ton of water, again, I highlighted that earlier. The other issue we're gonna come up with is, if Mr. Pay subdivides and develops that parcel, we're gonna have to come up with some agreement on whether that agreement covers every new parcel gets a 5/8, or how we handle that, and that's where I'd reach out to legal counsel to help us with that agreement.
oh,
I needed to at least come to this committee to at least inform you of where we're at, the challenges we've had, and then we're gonna take this probably to the board and legal counsel to, if we get acceptance from you guys, that we need to continue down this path of trying to get them water. The last 2 committees bought into this, they said, yes, let's get them water, let's move, but both of those board members are no longer with us.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, go ahead. 1 miner's inch or 1?
1 miner's inch,
16
or
gallons a minute?
11.22 gallons.
11.22 gallons per minute, or 1 5/8-inch meter.
Or, but it hasn't been subdivided yet.
It has not as of yet.
How many parcels in that 320 acres?
We've been looking, I think that, we've been thinking that you could probably get 20.
So we're talking 20 acre feet maybe.
Well, 20, yeah, we're not talking about much, but, you know, I don't think, you might get 20, right now, the best you could do would be 22 spots, I believe, when you sit down with the land planner and he tells you, yeah, you could do this, you could do that.
So 1 miner's inch is 9 acre feet.
Yes, but keep in mind, I believe what Mr. Pay is going to develop that is for treated, so it would be
Yeah.
much, much less usage.
It would be both.
I don't know that they'll have raw, I think they're just.
We have raw water that we get from a couple of things there that we use for raw water usage.
Yeah.
Away from that area where my home is, which is way down to the south. Maybe it's not that far.
We're not talking a lot of water.
We're not talking a lot of water.
What is the land zoned for? What's the current zoning?
Timber plan, we've been using it for timber and fires, and so the last 15 years, all we've worried about is fire safety. We've received certain awards from the NRSD, and, yeah, but and that's one of the reasons I would like to develop that area, is there are so many cars up there that I think is very dangerous. And you can look at the junk cars that are left along the road, you can look at the furniture parts that are left alone. It needs some occupation to keep the people that are up there under control. If you go out Jones Ridge Road, there's a little area out there, not too far from where Andrew lives, that we call Tweakerville. And believe me, those guys use they come in Red Dog Road, go out Jones Ridge Road, and they are, I don't want to say dangerous, but they're a different group of folks. The county has raided them with helicopters one time, but I just think it would be good for fire safety to do that. And I think that I haven't really looked at, haven't gone on to the GeoEarth thing, but I think it would be very easy with the lines that you currently have to make a connection down Red Dog down to Deer Creek Park, and maybe even get up to Quaker Cross, so that you had more circular development for water rights. I think that, not water rights, but water pressure, stuff that breaks.
I appreciate that, Mr. Fay. I will tell you, though, that knoll right there, we cannot get over without a pump.
Which knoll, right there?
Yeah, without a pump station.
Without a pump station.
Because originally, we were going to go up and down Banner Quaker, but it raises an elevation where we can't get the treated water over that hump without a pump station.
Okay. And where does that occur? Right there at Jones Ridge Road and Banner Quaker, or does it, I said Jones Ridge, but I meant
right in
Red Dog, right in there about halfway?
Yeah.
So what happens if you were to bring it up until you couldn't go, and then, because I know the people over on, they all back onto our property would give you an easement, I know they would.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that at a later discussion, but I appreciate that.
Chip, I have a question for this. We're not really just talking about two people who are interested in water here. What we're talking about is, with this RCO idea, it's not just looking at Mr. Kay's and Mr. Wilkinson's property. It's really what could reasonably be served. And there's a swath that you see here down to the bottom right of the photograph here that comes all the way down to Greenhorn Creek, and out
Greenhorn Creek.
Down at the bottom. It's the valley down at the bottom of this ridge line.
Yeah, the sphere of influence adjustment we had earlier talked about went all the way down here to Greenhorn Creek and all the way up.
Wow.
So there is potential for others to ask us, and in fact, can you scroll back up, please? We provided stub-outs on this pipeline for all of these folks as well. So there's going to be a heavy amount of interest if we...
How many stub-outs did we put in?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it basically anybody whose pipeline fronted their property, we provided them a stub-out.
Wow. Even though they weren't in the district and they...
Yes, but I can add to this that gets more complicated. This section of road right here, all of these folks get treated water from us right now as outside district customers.
Treated water?
Yeah.
So when did that happen?
Since the formation of Cascade Shores. So
we developed it essentially by putting all those stuff out.
a developer develops Cascade Shores and then
speculated on it
to us. Yeah. So that's why this has always been such a hard discussion for us. At one time, it was easy just to say, no, only people on the downhill side of the canal can get water. Yet now, when you look at our current system, not only do we serve some people on the other side, our pipelines go right through their zone.
No one looked at this before. Where's the land use? Where's the county? Where's the land use authorities on this? I mean, it seems like it's premature to provide stub-outs for timberland.
Well,
those are properties.
they are,
Those developed.
But what are they zoned for? I mean, no, all these stub-outs for all these.
Our property right now is TPC, Timber Protection Zone, but we have made, everybody thinks like I'm thinking, that it's safer with homes there than with the kids flying by and doing what they're doing. So I think that the county would let us out of the TPC, because we're going to, if we were to do that, we would donate to the land trust a lot of stuff there along Clipper Creek that would be very, very helpful for everybody.
So Laura, to your concern, I should point out that the sub-outs we did were for locations where there was already developed parcels only. We didn't speculate too far into the future that this whole area is gonna develop. No, we only did a sub-out. Like these parcels right here, most of them have homes, and they're not zoned for, I would imagine they're not zoned for timber protection zone, because they're already got homes on them, and we provided sub-outs at those locations. So, I think that if we go down that road to say, okay, the Railroad Commission order covers these folks, we're gonna get quite a few folks to come in, and I wanna say in the neighborhood of maybe 20, but that's about it. Anything beyond that, it's nearly impossible to get infrastructure put in down here to supply
So
those.
the other piece of that, Chip, is that NID is not responsible for delivering water from this location to anyone who could be down further, miles away from this pipeline.
We're not setting a precedent here.
We're not expanding that system.
Oh, well.
If somebody who's down towards
They
the
didn't think
bottom.
they were expanding when they put the other stuff out there.
Well, that's the beauty of it. With the
Yeah.
sub-out, we get to say, if you want water, here's where the sub-out is, you gotta get to it on your own.
Right.
And you gotta annex to the district.
Not if we
Not if
say it's
they're-
in the Railroad Commission order. If we define that this is our Railroad Commission order location, then anyone in this kind of vicinity that we've defined down to Greenhorn Creek and then back up to the pipe, based on topography and based on the flow of water, then they're eligible, even though they're outside the district boundaries. They're eligible to receive that water, but they have to get to it.
They have to get to it.
And
We are not
And it's a
responsible.
limited supply.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we're not setting a precedent too much by supplying water in the RCO area.
No.
It's not a lot of water,
Not a lot of water, and
and it's possible then annexation down the road.
Yes.
that is still in the long-term plan for the district, is to do a sphere of influence adjustment and fold this area in. It only makes sense because it's already got our infrastructure in it.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the rest of it's zoned for. You're from the planning commission, do you know what the zoning is on these areas? What's the
I think a lot of it's just forest and
What's the county's plan
TPZ.
for this area?
I think forest and TPZ.
Forest and
At some point with the, correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point with the identification of a Railroad Commission order, when we bought into this system in 1927, if there's a property owner that could reasonably have been served by our systems at that time, then we're incumbent upon it to get the water there. And the same within Sparksville, and the same out in different areas where there's RCO. There's not, as long as we can they can get access to it, then, we're not gonna do, for instance, a district finance water line extension off of this pipe into certain areas.
Yeah.
Right, that would not be in the cards at all. So irregardless of how the county has defined it, really, in terms of what its prospect is from the county planning side, it's really kind of irregardless for
Well,
us.
if the county says they wanna keep the timberland, we can't
Well-
change it to residential. I mean, we need
We're
to
not.
defer to the
Well,
land
we're
use
not.
authority.
We're not.
We're not.
Nobody said we're changing it to residential. These stubs that are along the line here, they're in front of already existing homes, most by majority of the case. And I think, one thing I might add, I wasn't here for the development of this process, but from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Chip, is that this was quite disruptive to this whole area, and we had to get a lot of help from the local community
Yes,
to put this.
for our new infrastructure?
Correct.
Yes, Mr.
Bay was very helpful.
was amazing and allowed us to use this property, as well as gave us the easement to put this infrastructure in. Was always very cooperative throughout the entire thing, which we appreciated, and unfortunately, at the time, when they put the pipe in, they provided a sub-out, and he fully expected to get water service, and then we told him no.
The truth is that we have down here, there's another, about another 110 acres that is down on the corner, come up just a little bit with your red, up to the corner of our property that you see.
Over here?
Right, yeah. Those two parcels to the east and north belong to us, and there are canals all over that now.
Yeah,
And those canals run and they empty into Cascade Shores.
yeah. So while we're on that topic, can you scroll maybe to the next slide, please? There we go. So this is one of the historical maps that, Mr. Wilkinson provided to us. The red lines indicate the canals. This is like 18, gosh, I'm trying to remember. Does it say on the map? Anyway, it's a
there's no documentation of what this map is.
It's a very early map of the, and I apologize, this was a snippet within it. So if you had the bigger map, it would tell you exactly what it is. And basically, it's the canal system. At one point in time, I think it was 1887, something of that nature. But the important thing I want to highlight here is that the canal that we drew on our other map, remember that little red circular canal we drew? That is represented in this map. And so you can see that's how that canal existed in the 1880s, and it was called the Cascade Canal. And in the agreement from PG&E, it lists the canals we have the obligation to provide water for, and the Cascade Canal is listed.
And is it the same canal? Is it the same location on this map as this map?
So that's the issue at hand, right, is that when we took it over in 1927, the canal didn't exist in this location anymore, it had been abandoned. But the question becomes, could you have reasonably served this area? Well, if it already had a canal in it at one point in time, I think it's safe to say you could have reasonably served it.
Yeah.
Still there.
Right. So that's the challenge that we've had.
Yeah. I just don't want to get ahead of the land use things. Why did we put that pipeline and treated one raw water pipeline there in the first place?
So, basically, the Banner Cascade pipeline, it was a new pressurized raw water facility because the Cascade Canal was at capacity. And then we put a treated water line in with it because we took the Cascade Shores treatment plant offline and folded it into the Elizabeth George system.
We had a treatment plant up there, and it was just aging, so we folded it into the George system.
So, to, talk about one of your concerns, I think PPC allows, and you can check this, allows for a principal house. Where it becomes restrictive is on accessory buildings or ancillary activities, like you can only farm, or you can have timber.
Now, I don't know everybody up there. I mean, you can get 3 or 4 miles away in those woods, but
Yeah.
I think we have the only TPZ property that I know of the property owners in that area. The only ones that are under TPZ are the Robinson piece. There's roughly 900 acres in TPZ, but that's all that's in TPZ that I am aware of.
Right.
That I'm aware of.
So it's not going to, like, delivering water, it's not going to stimulate development. That's not what's happening here.
Fundamentally, I'm not at all opposed to
Yeah.
this. I just want to make sure we're not getting ahead of our land use authority. We don't have land use authority. County has land use authority.
No.
I want to make sure that it's not growth inducing, we're not speculating, we're not trying to, expand. And that's my concern.
And I will add to that each one of these folks that come to us for water are probably gonna come with their own agreement, and that the board will authorize, so you have full control over that.
And they'll pay for all of the facilities. We
Oh, yeah,
shouldn't have to pay for any of these facilities.
They will pay the same fees, in fact, they'll pay the same fees as everyone else, but it will come with a out of district.
25%.
So, I like to move to direct staff to continue pursuit of the water service as previously recommended by the WHO committee.
I agree, and I would like to include the Nevada County, the land use authority in the discussion.
We will certainly inform them on what we're up to and head down that path. I appreciate the support, we'll keep you guys up to date. Probably come to the board at some point, for the development of the agreement.
And then make a comment that, pursue LAFCO and the annexation of this area
Yeah,
into the district.
when we do our redistricting
At a
conversation.
future date.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to be doing a redistricting conversation later this year.
Wouldn't it be part of the redistricting?
Sphere of influence.
Sphere of influence.
Sphere of influence wouldn't be part of that same. It seems like you'd do it all
But,
together. If you're going to expand the district.
This particular section of location was defined that, no, we wouldn't be doing a spirit of influence for the redistricting.
Or prior to redistricting.
Yeah, not for this section. This section's a little bit down the road after our raw water plan together. That was the advice of county council and our council. So we're sort of living on that.
Yeah, I think as long as it's just limited water and limited, I mean, we shouldn't be developers, we shouldn't be growth inducing.
And
We're
we
here to
don't-
provide water.
Yes, so even if we authorize water into this area, we will not change any of the parcels or any of that. So that's all done through the county.
Yeah.
If there is a parcel that exists that is solely a TPZ zone and they want water, we'll provide them water, but that's not going to automatically mean they can then subdivide that property. They have to go through the county to do all that.
We just need to be aware of any unintended consequences.
Sure. I just want to commend the management of that property because it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, thank you for
Okay,
that
well,
support. Do we have,
Thank you for putting up with me.
And I think,
it's been a long road.
When's our next meeting? I'll be here. We'll let you know.
Do we have any public comments?
Comment.
Okay, we see Mr. Wilkinson, have you been?
Want to listen, Andrew?
Yes,
Oh, we got you loud and clear, go ahead.
Finally, we got somebody smart on there on our team.
well, I'm glad John was meant to come to my house, but he showed up there, which is really good. So thank you, John, for being in the room. I'm going to keep this really brief. Welcome to the new directors. We really appreciate your support. John and I have been working on this for a long time. We really think there's a lot of benefits to it. And I just want to close by again thanking you for your support. And Chip and the staff there have been, great partners to work with. So we're looking forward to continuing progress and doing what we can to help support and promote the great work that NID is doing. Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate that. Any other public comments?
I think people in the chat box, we don't use chat, so they would raise their hand.
So if you're utilizing chat, we are not really equipped to handle that. If you can go ahead and raise your hand, we'll be glad to take your comment. Can we pull up the chat box and at least view it, or is that possible? Are we going down a slippery slope here that we have never been down?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there's
Yeah, I see it.
1880 map, thank you for the input.
who's it from?
Haley and
Alan Haley. Does anybody in here know Alan Haley?
Yep,
Who's that?
Smartest man in the county.
yep.
Well, it's right from his office, so it must be correct. Alan's a wonderful man.
So that was.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
putting
you.
up with me.
Thank you. So that was from Andrew in the chat box, so we appreciate that, Andrew, and we do have a full version of that map, and I'd be glad to provide it to you guys.
Yeah, and I'd like to see, is this order, does it cover all, because I had always thought railroad was only out in Smartsville. I didn't know it was.
Great question. So there are three different ones. So there's the Deer Creek system, the one we just covered. There's the Excelsior system, which is for Smartsville. And there's the Gold Hill system, which covers portions of Placer.
I'd like to see those.
Sure,
That would be
absolutely.
very helpful,
Yeah, okay.
with maps.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, so with that, we'll close that item and move to Watershed Sanitary Survey Memorandum of Understanding. So, I'll make this one fairly brief. Basically, NID is required by state mandate to provide a watershed sanitary survey every 5 years. The last update was completed in January of 2017, and so we're due. Historically, though, PCWA and NID have shared in this effort because we share the same watershed. So it only made sense to combine our efforts and come up with one consolidated document that we can both use, and we save a ton of money doing that. In doing so, we've always had a memorandum of understanding to establish basically the ground rules for this agreement. And PCWA has reached out to us again with an MOU that I attached into this package, and I'm coming to this committee to ask for the recommendation to the board to authorize this MOU. The it's always been great to work with PCWA, and in this particular case, they have, highlighted Bonnie Starr from Starr Consulting to do this update, and she did our last one, and she's really good at it. Lives in the local area, so knows the local watershed like nobody else, which really helps in this process. So with that, I'll just open it up to questions.
I just have a couple questions, just for everyone's, edification. What does these surveys entail?
Thank you. Yeah, I meant to cover that. So normally when you think of a watershed sanitary survey, you're gonna think, okay, this covers our entire watershed and the quality of our watershed and all the way up to Weber Peak. That's not what it is. It's really about the treated water system and the quality of water coming into and going out of our water treatment plant. And it goes through and it reviews all of the constituencies within the water that we measured. And are we subject to contamination? Are we finding that those levels of contamination are increasing, decreasing? Because that's a direct reflection on what's going on in the watershed. That's really what it's going to entail.
It's treatment plant specific.
It is very treatment plant oriented, yes. It also has some parts of it that reach out into what has historically happened in the county, for instance, hydraulic mining and arsenic and mercury. It will touch on some of those things a little bit, but it looks at our water quality and analysis to determine is that truly a concern. And from a drinking water perspective, it's not showing up at the treatment plant, so it's not really a concern. But this report dives into those concessions and provides feedback.
How much did the 2017 report cost? Was it $100,000?
It did not utilize the full budgeted allotment. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. I think somewhere in that 80,000 neighborhood. And I would expect this to be close. But, and you, as you can see, we're limited anyway in the MOU.
Does this take into account Newtown Canal?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any trends showing up there?
Well, we will know when we complete the report, but I can tell you that, there hasn't been any. So, we have been tracking the Newtown Canal since we completed the piping of that section, along Newtown Road, and we have seen some positive benefit. Whether that's gonna show, or be highlighted when you mix in 5 years worth of data, I'm not sure. But we'll see when the report comes out. I can tell you there was an immediate benefit, but it was very localized.
Right. Okay, so we need to make a motion to recommend.
Yeah, I recommend, but I have just a couple, I'll put my Sid Brown hat on.
Sure thing.
On the MOU, on the recitals, the B, it says the State Department of Health Services Office of Drinking Water. I believe the State Water Resources Control Board is now the Office of Drinking Water. Is that correct?
We will correct that, yeah.
So that was, so it'd be Water Resources Control Board Division of Drinking Water.
Yep.
And then just another minor on page 2, kind of in the middle of the page, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines above number 2, it says the technical committee shall meet as needed at such a location and at times, not a time, at times. So this line starts with needed at such location
Unless it's one single time,
and
but
at times.
Got it. All right.
Time, at times, I don't know. Anyway, that one is for grammatical, but when I was reading it, I stumbled on it.
Thank you.
Check it. That's it. I agree with Director Hanson. Was it forward?
Appreciate that. Thank you. We will move forward, and, you'll be seeing the report come the end of the year.
hold on, should that come, we would bring that forth as
Let's go to the board.
as a consent item to the board?
I
Are you good with that?
And I don't
Yep.
think it's a,
Okay, great.
Thanks for that, Chris.
Hopefully they do.
yeah.
Any public comment on this particular item? Star 9. Okay. With that, we will then move on to item number 5, Hydroelectric Department training request.
All right, you can take a break from talking now.
Joe.
Quite a run. So, all right, good morning. I'm Kean Summers. I'm the hydroelectric manager, and to introduce this item, I will start it by apologizing a little bit because I recognize that this is an ambiguous request, and I recognize the challenge in bringing it forward without the details flushed out. This is a request for a recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve training for hydroelectric department staff. Staff is somewhat handcuffed by the Board Policy 2175.2, which requires board approval for spending even budgeted money on trainings that exceed $3,000 when you roll in all the costs of food and meals and travel and all that sort of stuff. Traditionally, the department has used PG&E training for this need. So we've sent our operators down, we've sent our machinists down to PG&E for a multi-week program. So 10, 12 weeks worth of training where they'll go down for a week, they'll come back and do some on-the-job training. They'll go back for another week and learn about a specific skill and come back. These programs can cost plus or minus $30,000 per person per year. For an operator, a machinist can run in the neighborhood of $40,000 a year per person. If we can get people into the class. I have no experience with how much a training for a tech costs, an electrical systems technician, because we've had no success in actually getting anybody into those training programs. I'm hopeful that the costs of this training will go down. Previously, PG&E had the trainings in San Ramon. They have a big training center in San Ramon. They've found that facility to be extraordinarily expensive as well, so they've built their new building up in Auburn, which is where they're having the trainings now. I'm hopeful that saves us, a fair amount of money in lodging. Certainly, we're not going to pay somebody to stay the night in Auburn. Food expenses for breakfast and dinner should be much lower. Travel expenses should be much lower. So I'm hopeful that the cost will be far lower than the previous numbers. But where we're really stuck is we kind of get PG&E's leftovers. So we throw our name in the hat and say, hey, I've got a guy that I want to send to your operator training here. If you have room, call us. So what will happen is about a week, maybe 2 weeks before the class, they'll call and say, hey, we've got an open spot. Do you want your guy to take it? And so with Policy 2175.2, I can't say yes to that without coming to the board and getting your approval. Generally, I don't have time. We've tried to do this in the past where I've said, hold on, I will try and get to the board, and they've said, no, we got a line behind you. It's either yes or no at this point. And so that's what we're trying to deal with here. If we're lucky enough to get into one of these classes, to give staff the ability to say yes quickly. And so that's kind of the general introduction here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. What I'm looking for today is a recommendation to the Board of Directors. The full board needs to approve this if we decide to spend this money to give staff the ability to send these people to training if we can get in.
But it's budgeted training money.
Correct.
You have money in your training budget. What we're doing is just looking for almost a waiver of that policy at the moment. I think the plan is to come back and revisit the policy at APC and have the full board revisit this policy specific, because it's very prohibitive for hydro. Water ops, I'm not sure exactly to the degree of hydro, but it's on Kean's side of the house, we lose out on all these trainings on a regular basis. I mean, to a degree that we want to send people to, and we just can't wait for another board meeting in 3 weeks.
You have a special meeting. I mean, there's nothing prohibiting a special meeting.
Well,
Or $3,000.
for $5,000. I mean,
Well,
the goal I think is to get the policy itself adjusted.
yeah.
Right now, he's just sort of getting ahead of the game until we get to that point. February, who knows when a new training is going to come up in the next month or so.
It'll start in February or March is what they're talking
Yeah.
about. So this is very timely.
Yeah.
We're expecting to get, hoping to get a phone call.
I'm totally in favor of this but I have a couple of observations.
Yeah.
So having PG&E move up here is just godsend. Okay, that's great. How do I say this? To employ a fully trained person in one of these positions, how much more money, budget-wise, salary, would you have to pay versus picking up somebody who has talent, has the capacity to do the job, but doesn't have the training, and then we're spending money on that training.
And so the most recent salary survey that we did showed the machinists and operators are roughly 17% below market. So it's a substantial dollar amount. I don't know exactly what that converts into salary and benefits, but it's significant.
But the point is, if you had to go higher in the open market, if you could find somebody fully trained, they're going to cost considerably more money than picking somebody locally who has talent, has capacity to learn, and then we do the training.
Well, and so that hasn't been our experience. What has happened is that we'll send these people to training. They'll get the training, and then they'll leave.
And that was my next question. Can we sign a employment?
No, we can't.
Yeah, we have had that discussion with the attorneys, and it's essentially you're turning them into indentured servants at that point, and that's a non-starter.
We've looked at that.
And they have no obligation to repay the.
That is correct. All we can do is send them and pay them fairly so they'll stay. Is the experience that we're stuck with.
So what happens when you sign a pitcher or a football player to a 5-year contract?
Well, you're in the NFL, then you do it.
And the military does that as well. I mean,
Yeah,
we have to agree to.
But they can't sign employment contracts.
No. There's only,
Why not?
no, this could be a conversation for legal, because we've looked into this and tried to say, hey, look, we're spending a lot of money on these individuals, they're going out, they're getting trained, we're bringing them up to speed to a level where now all of a sudden they're on the playing field with our peer sister agencies throughout the state, and sometimes they decide to bounce.
And that's even in the last year. We hired an operator from a cogen plant down the hill, brought him up to speed on hydro, trained him on hydro, how to operate everything, and he left for Drum, PG&E's Drum Powerhouse in less than a year.
So PG&E is headhunting our people?
That is the additional problem with sending folks to PG&E school, is that they can see who's the talent, and then they'll go after them. The alternative, though, is that we don't train them, and I can assure you that an outage on the Chicago Park Powerhouse will flow through this cost in hours.
Right.
And so it is critical that we have folks that are well-trained, understand what they're doing, and can get these powerhouses back online as quickly as possible.
I have a question. Does SMUD train their people?
So they have a similar school that we've had zero luck getting into their school. We've actually met with their I'm going to draw a blank on his title, the director of training for their program down there. They use one of the local junior colleges for a lot of their classwork. We have explored that, but have had zero success actually getting people into it. We've actually had joint meetings with PCWA, YCWA, EID. We've all come together and talked with SMUD to try and figure out how we can build this program together. And it's just been a real challenge. That there's also, in the industry, there's this, the baby boomer retirement that we've heard of, right? So these groups are training at their capacity as much as they can and using them internally. So,
Does Sierra College here have a program for this type of work?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Seems like we should lobby them.
I-
Have it be a local.
Pretty special.
And I think that's the problem, right? So absolutely, we'd send 1 or 2 people to it, but they're looking at that going, well, we're not going to develop a program for 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
And so that's where we really struggle.
So that's all we need is 1 or 2. And
A
so
year.
my next question is, you said it was $35,000 to $40,000 per person
Yeah.
to do this training. That's including travel, lodging, meals, per diem.
That's an all-in cost.
And so what is the actual training cost? I mean, how much of that 30,000 is actually training? Because if it's a year, if it's, how many, 12 weeks or?
It's in that neighborhood. It varies by the program and who's going. But it's a multi-week, 10, 12 weeks generally, where they'll go
So
down
you don't know
for
the
a while.
base cost of what they
It
charge?
tends to run $3,000 to $4,000 a week for the actual training, but it depends. If you're sending a machinist down and they're going to spend a lot of time on a mill or a lathe, they roll the tooling costs into that, so that cost is more expensive. If you're sending them down for a print reading class, and all they've got to do is look at some printouts, then that's a cheaper class. So it varies by the specific week that you're in.
And so your training budget only allows training of one person per year? Is that?
That's generally where we try and budget it, yeah.
So we need to advance a recommendation to review and discuss.
I think we should review, I think we bring more information back and about the alternatives and talk to legal and see if we can, what are our options to say if we're gonna send you to this training, we need some assurance that we're gonna get us around a little while. I mean,
I can assure you, we have gone all the way down that rabbit hole.
That's not really part of the request. The request is, I see your need there, but I think what Kian and his staff are needing at this point is a recommendation to advance to the board that essentially, is it a waiver? A waiver of...
No, what I'm requesting is approval of spending this year's budget.
Spending this year's budget.
If I can get into classes.
Right,
Yes.
as soon as you can.
the most disconcerting, sentence in this, is that we may have staff that aren't trained, the people that would not be able to respond to, emergencies. Has not been successful in recruiting journey level or higher candidates. And so I looked on the org chart and we have, seniors, we have senior.
There's a lot of training that's happening.
Yeah, and
We have hydro operators, we have
Those folks
two seniors. Are they trained?
yes.
Yeah.
They've gone, both the seniors now have gone through the PG&E training.
We have two senior operators that are at least trained.
Yes.
That's good. And of the 1-2s, and I don't know why we clump 1s and 2s together, because it runs from 55,000 to 75,000. There's 5 of them. Are all 5 of them 1s?
No, some of them have been trained, some of them have been not. Some of them will be a 1 that I'm trying to send to training. Some of them are a 2 that have been through the training.
How many have been trained how many are 2s and how many are 1s?
I believe I have 2 1s and 3 2s.
3 2s. So 5 of your 7 operators have been trained already.
Yes.
To a certain level.
Yeah.
I've been through this $40,000, $30,000 training. So 5 of 7.
Yeah, I would need to check that though.
Okay.
What's the question?
And then I
we
just
have
wanted to
an open
understand the lay of the
position,
land.
but we don't have- We don't
have.
have 5 operators right now. We have an open position that a person recently left, and I'm trying to backfill it this time. We're recruiting
I
for.
saw that on the website, yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 of the 6 have been trained.
4.
4 of the 6 have been trained. Okay. And then on the machinist, we have 1 senior. Has he been trained?
Yes.
And on the 1-2s, the 2s, how many are they both 1s or?
No, so we have one that's a 2 that's been partially through the PG&E training, but I've been unsuccessful in getting him. The machinist training is a multi-year program, so it'll be, by the time we're done training the machinist, we've paid for $100,000 worth of education. And so he's been through the first year, and we've been unsuccessful in getting him in the last 2 years. So what we've tried to do is pull relevant skills from other places to train him up. So we'll send him on, go back. If he needs to learn how to use a mill, we'll go find a mill training, which are typically in the Bay Area, so we'll send him to the Bay Area for a week and train him on that. And then the other person is a 1 and has not been through the training.
Okay. And then the system techs, there's 2 seniors. Have they been trained?
They've been externally trained, so we did not provide the training or via PG&E for them. They have ongoing training needs where we'll send them up to SEL, so Schweitzer Engineering Labs out in Pullman, has a training program that we'll send them up to for that. So they'll have ongoing training needs as the technology evolves. They haven't gone through this PG&E class that we're talking about.
But it's not required to do PG&E training
Correct.
necessarily.
Yeah.
To understand the skill set.
Correct.
And what about the 1-2? Is it a 1 or a 2?
He is, you're talking about the systems tech, not the comp tech. So it's a Tech 2, he's a Tech 2, and he's partially been trained via PG&E, and then we've sent him to other classes. We partnered with EID last year to bring in a person, so he's gotten some of his training there. He has not gone through the full PG&E program.
So
So which one
I
of these
just wanna,
positions are, can I finish?
Okay.
Which one of these positions are you wanting to train this year?
So I'd love to get at least one operator in. I don't have the budget to get two operators in. I don't think, unless the cost from Auburn, moving from San Ramon to Auburn is significantly cheaper. So I'd love to get at least one operator in, and I don't have much hope, but I'd love for my machinist to be able to finish his program. But as I've said, we haven't had much luck getting them into that program. That seems to be very heavily impacted in PG&E.
And if 4 of your 6 operators have been through the training, is there on-the-job training these people
Absolutely.
can have? If all these people, 4 of the 6 have been trained, can they work with other people and try and?
And that's what we do, right? So we'll get them out there, but getting them through the electrical theory classes, getting them through the transmission theory classes, there's a whole lot of value to sending them to training with in an actual program as opposed to just relying on the
Because my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that our operators, PG&E through our PPE operate our system, and our operators are mostly monitoring and responding to PG&E requests to turn this dial or do that.
No, that's incorrect. Our operators, PG&E monitors our system and they'll make load changes, but if there's any problem at the powerhouse, it's our operator that goes out and deals with it.
Their problem, okay.
Correct.
But it's general, they're not turning it off every day and saying, okay, let's turn on Chicago Powerhouse to use the power, right, isn't it?
We don't want to subcontract to PG&E.
I'm sorry?
I don't think we want to subcontract to PG&E.
My understanding is our PPE, they run, they use our facilities in their system. And please correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my understanding. How does it work then? What is our relationship with PG&E in the operation of our,
So yes, they'll schedule our power. So they'll say, you're gonna run 40 megawatts at this time. And then they'll generally, remotely bring that up to the demand. Now, if something goes wrong, if the powerhouse trips offline, you'll see in my report here, we had a rough, January. Our operators will go out, they'll assess the problem, they'll deal with whatever issue if they can, then they'll restart the powerhouse and then hand the controls back over to PG&E.
Is it fair to say that PG&E never really steps foot in our powerhouse?
Absolutely. PG&E has never set a
Okay.
foot in our powerhouse, since we separated from the partnership agreement, a PG&E operator, so.
this is helpful, I don't know, I'm just trying to find out how
Yeah,
it
no, I
operates.
think they're a guy behind a computer, we are the hands-on, people out there.
So this year, which one of these are you wanting to send, since you only can send one?
Which
You want to
person?
send an operator, no, not person, I don't want a person.
Okay.
So you want to send a level 1 hydro operator?
I would like to send one of my operator ones, yes.
Okay. I'd like to find out how much, especially with this, since it's in Auburn, maybe when you bring it to the board, you can let us know what the base cost of the class is, and a more realistic cost estimate.
I can try, it's gonna be based on historic,
Oh, PG&E doesn't tell us how much they're gonna
No.
charge us?
well, you get an idea going in, and they'll tell you it's probably this upper cap, but it's very fluid. And so basically what we signed is a contract that says, get them through this program, get them their operator certificate, and then we will pay you as long as it doesn't exceed whatever the board approves.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's like no other training I've ever heard of.
When you run the market, you can do things differently, and that's the position that they're in, so.
And so EID and PCWA and YWA, they all send all of their hydro people to PG&E?
So generally, they're more successful in recruiting qualified candidates. Remember that they're the 17 to 20% above us pay-wise. So they recruit from the markets. They've successfully pulled PG&E people. I know South Feather, they have a policy where they pay their hydroelectric staff / slightly above PG&E prices, or wages. That's how they recruit and retain their staff, so they don't have this training issue. So when it's available, yes, but historically they've recruited qualified candidates.
That's interesting.
As someone who just went through a citrus harvest and had to renegotiate every week, it's getting pricey.
Yeah. I'd like a cost benefit analysis of all these power plants. I was asking our former general manager over and over, how are these performing? I looked at the end of year, revenues from these smaller plants that are exempt from the FERC. I'd like to have a cost benefit. How maybe we don't need all of these staff.
We're a little outside this
That's outside of
topic.
this discussion, but that's something that it's incredibly expensive, so we have to start thinking smarter, trying to figure out, does this pencil out, does it make sense? And so it's something that I think we should pursue in the future.
So we need to give you the tools to do your job.
That's what I'm asking for at this point.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that. As simple as that.
Yeah, and
But I've heard a little more information from Director Peters on some detail about number of staff and where they are in the training paradigm and who we might want to send to this particular training, since it might be only 1 or 2 per year. Right?
Yeah, and I don't think we can talk about the who, right?
No, we don't need,
That's
just the
HR.
position
No,
level. Just the
not the
position
who.
level.
Not the person itself,
Yeah.
just the position.
The position.
Like ultimately, if this training comes up, this position, operator 1 would go.
Well, but you have to use your own discretion
That's right.
also.
Yeah, what's
It's a generalization.
But ultimately, what he was looking for is an advance recommendation to the board. Are we getting that, or are we getting,
I'm hearing that,
come
Yeah.
back for more
I-
information?
No,
No, let's take it to the board.
but with some more information.
More fleshed out.
Yeah.
You do that.
And if
Thank
we
you.
need to fix the policy, I'm always in favor of fixing the policy and all these Band-Aids. Let's look at.
Yeah, it's clear this policy seems a little,
Many of our policies.
a little outdated.
Yeah,
100 years old.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell them more. That's right.
At least 3.
So, yeah, okay,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Should we go to public comment?
And I have one more comment after public comment.
So we're opening it up for public comment, star 9. There's not a bunch of public on there, so.
Yeah.
All right. So seeing none.
So you're making a lot of decisions every day on the labor employee. What would make your life easier? What would make this thing run smoother? We come up to 17, we cough up to 17% differential, so we're competitive. And what would that look like? I guess that's for more information down the road.
Rich, I'd prefer to not talk about that conversation here in this meeting. That's,
No, I understand.
that rolls into
Yeah, I understand what we're into, but
topics that we have not noticed on Brown Act, so
okay.
I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear you're thinking about it.
What do we need to do to make life, make it run smooth? Let's just put it generally.
Add something to the bar house.
Yeah. Put a trailer there so I can just live there.
Okay, that closes item number 5. We'll open up item number 6, Hydroelectric Department Activities Update.
Can I borrow your,
You got it.
clicker? Pull up the presentation here. All right. We'll go ahead and get started here. So typically the way I do this is I have kind of some boilerplate things that I try and run through every month in terms of some of the metrics that the department's judged on, and then we'll, this month I've got a picture show. We'll show you some videos of just how rough of a month it was for the crew out there, and then just talk through some of the highlights of the month. So first of all, you'll see that first outage on Bowman, 109 hours. That is a record-long outage for us out there in my tenure. We'll dive into some more details on that, so I'd like to hold any questions on that until we get to the actual pictures there. We also had a short outage, a day, out there when we had a 60 kV line problem. So essentially what that means is a tree hit the line, or, you know, any number of things could have happened out there. I think we hit all of those number of things here last month. Dutch Flat, Powerhouse, we had a brief, outage on the 5th for line switching. Essentially, that is PG&E saying, we want to move your power this way instead of that way, so you have to shut down for a couple of minutes while we switch the transmission line. Good news about that is that it doesn't impact our PPA. We were available. We said we can generate. They said, okay, we're going to pay you. The next one here on Dutch Flat is, Greg mentioned our new balance of plant controller during a previous board meeting. That's essentially the brains in the powerhouse, and it worked perfectly here. What happened is that our equipment sensed a problem on the PG&E transmission line. We briefly disconnected. The powerhouse kind of sat there and idled. And then when it saw that the problem on the transmission line had cleared, we resynced and started generating again.
Was an operator present?
No, and so that's the beauty of this new system and why we invested the money in it. And so the powerhouse is now is smart enough to know, wait, I got this. I'm just going to wait for PG&E. I'm going to wait for whatever tree fell on the line to clear, and I'm going to close back in. Historically, we would have had to call out an operator on, what time was that? So 6 o'clock at night, so that would have been a double time call out, and they would have had to go down to the powerhouse. It would have been a quick reset by the time they would have walked in, but this investment that we've made this year will have stopped that need.
So it reduces the need of operators to be at the power.
Well, it reduces the emergency call-outs for the operators. It doesn't necessarily reduce the overall need. So it keeps the cost of the existing operators down. So,
And substantially shortens the response time.
Yeah.
This would have been a 3-hour outage,
Yeah.
probably, by the time they found somebody, they drove to the powerhouse, they kicked everything back on. It always takes a couple hours. So, Rollins, again, you can see on the 28th, we had a number of line relays come through. You'll recall we had some bad weather on that day. A lot of trees, loading and unloading snow onto the lines. All of those are PG&E induced outages, so again, we'll invoice for 100% available there. And that's why the note on the bottom here, we're still negotiating with PG&E on these outages this month. So this is where I believe they should be, and generally we're pretty close. We tend to argue over minutes, but this is pretty close. And then in Combi South, again, just another normal line relay. So that one, since we're on the power purchase agreement with NCPA, that is lost revenue there. So when that powerhouse tripped offline that time, and it took us a fair amount of time to get there to turn it back on, that cost us money. And just to be clear, that 10 hours there isn't necessarily our response time. That may have been how long it took PG&E to get the lines back on. So generally what we'll do is the powerhouse will trip on a night like this when we know it's snowy. We'll call PG&E for an update and say, how long till your crew gets out there. We get the same sort of notification that you do when the power goes off at your house, and you can pull up a little outage map, and a crew has been assigned. And so we're kind of stuck waiting for them to bring the lines back. So
I have a question about the balance of power. This is kind of intriguing to me, balance of plant. I know I was trying to see how much these cost, and apparently it's a multi-year expense, and so you don't know the total cost, because some of it's this year, some of it, and so it's spread over a long time.
years, yeah.
And so how much does it cost, how much did it cost? It was Dutch Flat was the one you put that?
Most recently, we've also done Chicago Park. Bowman's got a balanced plant controller there, and we're working on Rollins here shortly.
Yeah. So how much does it cost to install this facility?
So it's in the neighborhood of $150,000, depending on how far we go into it, right? So there's the very basic controller, but then that controller can be set to monitor a number of different things. It can monitor cooling water flow, it can monitor vibration, it can monitor anything you can bring into it, and so that's where you can really get carried away on the cost. And so what we've tried to do is only monitor the critical systems. So we've gone to vibration monitoring, which is absolutely critical. If you can wipe a bearing extremely quickly, if your shaft starts to vibrate. So we've gotten away, we monitor that. We're rolling in the cooling water systems into Chicago Park this year. We'll start monitoring the cooling water systems. And so that, again, is critical. That'll also allow us to use our water more efficiently. Right now, they're old pressure gauges that were designed for when a person sat in the powerhouse and they can tweak the controls, right? So when the units run under the higher load, you need more cooling water. So the person would sit there in the powerhouse and tweak the controls and add cooling water as the temperature went up. At the point we're at now, we've just got to set them for a worst case because there's not a person there continuously tweaking them. So with these new systems, we'll be able to put more water through the turbine and less through the cooling water system. So,
And so we're starting with our highest producing plant.
correct. That's generally how we prioritize.
Yeah,
It's typically Chicago Park, Dutch Flat, Rawlins. Bowman kind of gets thrown in there sometimes because it's so remote. And so a response to Bowman takes a really long time, especially this time of the year when it's a snowcat ride-in, and I've got some video of that you can see the conditions that they're dealing with out there. So Bowman tends to get a bit more of the upgrades than something like Combi South.
Is Bowman on the NCPA agreement?
No, it's on the PG&E agreement.
It is on.
So it's availability based.
And so I thought that the 2266 FERC license does it include Bowman as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
Okay, so those 4 plants.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Bowman wind event. So we'll dive into the outage here a little bit. This is wind data from our station on Bowman Lake Dam. And what you can see is we had wind gusts in the neighborhood of 83, 84 miles an hour on Bowman Lake Dam on the evening of the 18th, morning of the 19th. Somewhere in the middle of the night there, the powerhouse tripped, and it was right around midnight. That's one of the things that we're arguing with PG&E about right now is, was it midnight or the minute before midnight, which rolls into the previous day, so we've got to pay fees on missing that schedule, and so it's amazing how much effort can go into arguing for a minute. And so that's where we are right now. I also want to highlight, because I've got a video on the next page, so during the day of the 19th, we went out and patrolled, and so you're seeing wind gusts, in the 30s, 40s mile an hour range, and so that's some of what the video is here, is what those wind gusts look like. So keep in mind the wind was blowing twice as hard while this event was happening. So the overall damage that we sustained out there was, like I said, like nothing I've ever seen before. Generally, we probably average out to damaging 1 pole a year. This year we have 11 poles that were damaged in some way or another. Damage ranging from, snapping the lines to snapping the poles to just the poles kind of wobbling themselves loose in their holes that requires that we go out there and deal with it. So the next slide here, you can see this is the poles 86 through 89. This was a tremendous amount of damage through this section here. Number of trees came across the line, snapped the line in multiple places. You can see on the picture on the right-hand side here that just lines laying on the ground. This, on the far side, on the right-hand side here, that's actually the pole, this part sticking up here. You can see that the arms have been ripped off it when the tree came through the line. The picture on the left, if you look closely at the wire coming down, you can see how it is spiraled around the pole. So when that line broke, it whipped so violently it wrapped itself around the pole a couple of times. Just incredible amounts of damage out there. Bounce to the next slide. This is pole 97. You can see on the left-hand picture is our maintenance superintendent, and then the line contractor that we paid to come out there and do it. And they're standing next to the top of the pole right there. So the pole snapped off about 2/3 of the way up, flung itself over to the side. You can also see in the background of the picture on the left is the pole behind it is leaning. This was a corner pole, which tends to have substantial tension in it. So when you go around a corner, it's really pulling hard, so when it snaps, it impacts a couple of poles down the line. Go to the next slide here. So this is pole 127. This is on the top of Clyde Mountain. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the area out there, but Clyde Mountain is, as you're coming out of the South Yuba River, it's the mountain up on your left there. This is a video on the left. What you'll see here is the wind blowing, and it physically just blew that pole over. There is no tree on the line through there. And as I mentioned, this is the next day. So this is 30, 40 mile an hour wind gusts versus mid-80s wind gusts.
So the 80s kind of rocked it loose, and then
It snapped in half, and that's what you're seeing here. Is this is that pole once we've taken it down and put it on the ground. I think the good news here is that I feel like our line inspection program is working. This is a healthy pole. Well, it was a healthy pole before it cracked, right? You're not seeing a whole bunch of rot in here. It's not like a rotten pole that got, it was just waiting to go. This was a physically strong pole that just, who knows what the microgust in that area was, that just physically got blown over during this event.
This is the same location, just one day apart, these two?
It took us a day to cut the road up there, and then a day to,
So look at the difference in this.
and that's the other thing, right? So as this storm is, immediately after this windstorm, the next storm started lining up, and they're talking feet of snow out there during this next event.
How much longer would it take if you had 4 or 5 feet of snow there?
I've chosen not to think about that. We probably could have done it in a similar amount of time, but we would have set the poles with helicopters.
Yeah.
And so it would have been extraordinarily expensive and very weather dependent. We were really lucky on that Saturday. We had a day of decent weather, so we could have flown. But I mean, the guys, they just killed it out there. There is so much labor that went into this week out there. Greg can, you get the frustrated emails at the end of the day. We're almost there. We're close. We're going to nail this thing, and it's going to happen before it snows. Because the cost would have exploded if we hadn't beat the snow. Fortunately, we've never had to rent a tracked pole setting rig. I don't even know where that would get mobilized from, or we would have sent loaders out there and moved the snow.
Yeah, I think what was impressive the most was that after the wind event, we were lining up for a really big storm that Chip pointed out this morning for us. And it brought a bunch of snow to the area, and Kean's team and the hydro folks just went out there, and you did work that normally would be maybe over a week.
Oh, yeah.
In just a couple days.
No, there were some extremely long hours. I mean, they're working in the dark. They're working.
Yeah. It was
extraordinarily cold. Even when the wind stopped, it was not warm up there. So this is 6,000 feet or so would be my guess. So very cold. So we get that put back together, and then the next storm rolls in. And before you hit play here, Pam, what I'm showing you here is, so the next day, or within days, we get this dump of snow. You can see the difference between the previous slide, where there's almost no snow, and this dump of snow. The crews are snowcatting in to get both the powerhouse and the Bowman Spalding Canal back online. That is the other thing that I didn't highlight here as I'm talking power production, but we had at least 7 trees that fell across the Bowman Spalding Canal in the upper division up there, so, we sent all of our resources up there to pull those off as well, and keep that water moving. So once the snow happened, we had to try and start cutting a road into it, and this is extraordinarily dangerous avalanche conditions. What you've got is a couple of inches of ice, everything had pretty well melted down, and then feet of this powder. I mean, you called it powdered sugar earlier, right? It's just very, very unstable snow, which is the reason the second Bowman trip took us 29 hours to get there. We were unsuccessful in cutting the road that day. We sent both of the snowcats out, and you'll see when we hit play here that they had just gotten stuck here. He's going to jump out and grab the shovel. It's not a great video, but and throw it in the back jumps out and goes above his waist into the snow. And this is after hours of, an hour of shoveling to get the cat moving again, so they can continue on their way. So, you want to get that pan? See him jump out here and just kind of disappear there. You can also see when he kind of looks down a little bit, the cat is pushing the snow. There were times when the snow was so deep they couldn't lift the blade out of it, and so soft that they were sinking into it. The tracks are, 2-3 feet tall, and they're sinking this equipment into there trying to make their way back there. So, as I mentioned, that day the avalanche danger got too high. We said, we're seeing the water, everything's moving. We'll let this set up overnight and try and get in there the next day. It was just too dangerous to continue to send people back. There's a couple of sections of that road going into Bowman Lake that it's just avalanche country, and it's just too extreme at that point. So that's the storm summary event. I don't know if there are any questions about that. As of now, we've got things put back together. The water's flowing and the power's on. So I think that's the key. It looks like about a year and a half ago. So I'll switch into the key performance indicators that I typically provide the committee. We started tracking a couple of different metrics. One of those is our weekly dam inspections. It's our goal in the department to see every dam at least every week. And so that is above and beyond the requirement, and that doesn't always happen in this time of the year. It's extraordinarily difficult to get to French Lake right now. There's feet of snow up there. All of these upper division lakes are difficult. So what we'll do is, in order to make sure that we get our monthly, which is what we require, is our hard requirement, we'll fly out there once a month if we have to. But generally, you'll see that during the winter months, we don't get out and do our dam inspections quite as often. I don't know that there's a whole lot of to compare here as we build this data set. As you can see, we don't even have 2 full years of data. So we'll start trying to work on that and see how this evolves and determine what our standard is. But this is also, the operators do the dam inspections as well, so it's not just powerhouse time, it's also out there looking at the dams, looking at the canals and doing all those things along the way. So
The hydro operators or the water distribution operators?
hydro operators. So we also have water system operators in the hydro department that can do the inspections as well. So.
But you use the hydro operators to do it?
We'll use who's available, right? So if we're sending an operator into the Bowman Powerhouse to do a station check or load change out there, then we'll say, you look at the dam while you're out there. If we don't have to go out to Bowman, then typically we'll send one of the WSOs out there. They're less expensive to have do those inspections. So, the other key indicator that we track here is what percentage of our linear facilities we inspect. So that is what percentage of the transmission line did we walk, what percentage of the Chicago Park Canal, what percentage of the Dutch Flat Flume. And then we've also started rolling the South Yuba Canal into this, assuming that we would take this thing over. We did a bunch of training on it at the end of last year. We lost an operator that we haven't been able to backfill yet, so that patrolling the South Yuba Canal has become a lower priority, so I expect that these numbers will be fairly low.
Was that one of the South Yuba Canal? You had 2 water operators that were doing the South Yuba Canal inspection. Was that one of your operators or that one of your operators?
Who? Inspections on South Yuba.
You said you have operators working on the South Yuba Canal. And my understanding is that the operators that were hired for South Yuba were from water.
No, so the operators are on the hydro side. The maintenance staff is on the water
the
maintenance side.
distribution.
Yeah, no, as Ken has mentioned, the operations of the facilities is handled through hydro.
Right.
But when the facility breaks or needs maintenance, we'll reach out to this maintenance department to fix it. So it's kind of a shared resource.
So whose operator was lost?
So I lost the operator.
You lost the operator, okay.
Yeah. So you may have 2, I don't know. Yeah. In this case, we're talking about the hydro operator.
Hydro, water distribution, or water...
The person that left was a hydroelectric plant operator.
Plant operator,
Yeah.
not a distribution operator.
This is where, so Chip has distribution operators, I have system operators. And so they can do different things. They require different certificates, and so mine tend to lean more to the powerhouse side of things, and frankly, I don't know your business. So
Basically, they have similar functions, but they're not the same position. They have very different titles. So, in
Titles and what's in the title.
Keehan's distribution guys, as a comparison to what we do, also operate powerhouse to a limited capacity. So they're very different positions.
I like it. So one of yours was,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
One of your operators, not your not your system.
one of my powerhouse operators left, not one of my water system operators. So the higher level person
Yeah.
left.
So you've had two, you have two water system operators dedicated to the South Yuba Canal.
Well, so right now they're open positions, and we've decided to hold off until we actually take the canal over. We staffed up a little bit, but now that this person has left, my intent is to
Wait.
hold off until
Smart.
it's a bit more firm.
I think what you're referring to are the two folks from the maintenance department.
Ah, there we
The
go.
maintenance department, so that's a whole nother different
Whole nother, okay.
process. And
Okay.
they are primarily dedicated to, shadowing and working with PG&E to make sure that when that system's taken over, we understand so much more of that, 17-mile long Yuba Canal, but they are also, once we can't get in up there and it's all operating fine, they're active in other sections of the maintenance department, just as if they were working down in the placer yard or whatever, so
We'll
they're.
get to a little bit of that in my slide.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Right on.
Okay, all right, so that's my confusion, I just am
Yeah.
trying to come up to speed.
So I expect that our linear facility inspections won't be as strong since we are counting the South Yuba Canal, and something that was our goal to get out there and inspect. It's also extraordinarily difficult to inspect the Bowman transmission line right now. It's miles of snowshoeing or snowcatting, so it's just not as often that we get out there. So
Have you ever thought of a helicopter?
absolutely, and what I'd love is a drone, right? So but most of the drone flight programs and everybody I've talked to says it's all line of sight. You can only go as far as line of sight. But I would love to program a drone, just follow the transmission line. I can tell you exactly where to go. I can tell you exactly what I want to see. And then on your return trip, fly the Bowman Spalding Canal and inspect it. But we're just not there with the federal regulations at this point. And then a helicopter, we do use helicopters, but Director Peters mentioned that it runs about $2,000 an hour in flight time. So we try and limit that as much as possible. So.
Wow.
So the other thing we check is, or we keep track of, is our daily powerhouse inspections. I think it's incredibly important for a person to at least walk through the powerhouse, and this is not a long inspection. An operator can knock out 3 or 4 powerhouses a day, depending on drive time. But until all of our systems are automated, until we can see everything on SCADA, having that body in there regularly is really important. Until the technology advances to the point that you can smell burnt oil before it shows up in somewhere, you can get that little hint of an electrical fire before it happens. These guys, they need to be in there daily, doing their rounds, taking their reads and putting eyes on it. And I don't see that going away in the near future. I just don't see that the technology is there yet. The one exception is Bowman, which is as you saw on the previous slide there, sometimes you just can't physically get there, and the safety overrides the need to get into that powerhouse.
Do all of the operators check in at what's the place called, Secret Town, is that what Secret Town facility, before they go anywhere?
No. Typically we have a morning call, and everybody's expected to be in on that morning call. But a lot of times, especially with the pandemic, we've said don't come into the office. Go to wherever you're going to start your day, call in on that morning call, figure out what may have changed since the plan was made last night, and then execute your route.
Has that saved time? I mean,
I believe so. I think it's one of the things that's come out of the pandemic that's positive, right? I think it has. I struggle with it because I don't have as much contact with the crew, right? There's the guys coming in or walking by and you overhear the conversation about something that's going wrong over here, and you can jump into that, and I don't get that feedback as much anymore. But in terms of saving time.
Yeah, and they're all trained, so.
Generally, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And so then I tend to list my hydro maintenance key activities. I think that once the CMMS comes online and I can mine the work orders and data more efficiently, I'd like to see developing some more numerical metrics for this group. How long are we spending on certain things? What's breaking? How can we proactively go after fixing them? But we're just not there yet. And mining through the paper work order system that we have is just not doable at this point. So, but I guess as a glimpse into the future, we have started beta testing on the CMMS program. So there's a group, a selected group in the district. We've got some water treatment folks, some hydro folks, some maintenance folks that are just in there playing, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what do we want to tweak. A lot of the data is already in the system, so we're very close to rolling this thing out. It won't have all its functionality until the ERP is fully operational. There's the CMMS, you're going to be able to enter your time card time. So when you do a work order, you work 2 hours on this work order, that'll automatically bounce over to your timesheet at some point. But that connection's got to get made, and there's still a fair amount of work to do there. But
so CMMS is significantly ahead of the ERP?
I'm not as up to speed on the ERP. I can tell you that, you know what, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a little further ahead.
Yeah.
So when do you anticipate CMMS to be
I hope that
more widely functional?
we're using it middle of the year.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
And then towards the end of the third quarter, it's pretty well rolling along.
Great.
So
That's encouraging.
it will take time. There's training. But and we've got an update plan for the board here, and my intention is to have it on my phone and show you on the screen what this is how you write a work order.
Yeah.
And
I think we got a sandbox for both CMMS and ERP to go in and show you what we can do, so.
yeah.
Great.
Then we'll just need a little help from IT, or IT will need a little help with more
Yeah.
personnel to manage it.
John,
Right, John?
there's
John's over there shaking.
Yeah.
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 Are these routine activities, or are they
No,
extraordinary activities?
That's a good question. Typically, I tend to, if it's just routine sort of stuff, I try and not report it. I'd be happy to bring more detail if you're interested, but I tend to try and give you one slide of the highlights. It's a month's worth of work for a crew of 20-ish people, so I distill as much down as I can into to fit on the screen here. So
Your restocking of inventory, parts getting harder to find?
That's an interesting question. We found the poles that we needed pretty quickly, because that's the restocking that I'm talking about here. We burned through every spare pole we had. We burned through most of our spare insulators on this transmission line. And the poles we got quickly, they always come out of Oregon. And I haven't heard an update on the insulators. I can tell you that there are absolutely certain things that have gotten a whole lot harder to find. We're trying to put a standby generator in the Comey South powerhouse, and it took 3 to 6 months just to get the generator in. So these things,
Wow.
the lead times are definitely up on certain items.
So does that mean you have to increase your inventory?
I don't know. I've rolled that around, and what do we do with that? Is this pandemic a temporary thing, and once we kind of dust everything off and get rolling again, it'll get better? I don't know. The other big shift in the power industry is a year or so ago, the Trump administration issued an executive order about not buying critical powerhouse equipment from, what do they call it, adversaries of the United States. And it's up to you to determine what that is. And it was fairly unclear of, can you buy, if you need a processor or something that the overwhelming majority of them aren't made here, can you buy that and put it into a piece of American-made equipment? And we don't know. So that's having some significant impacts on the supply chain as the entire industry tries to parse its way through all of this.
Solar wind was a bit of an issue, huh?
Well,
It
yeah.
didn't affect us.
Correct.
That was, that was a scare.
What's that? What do you mean?
Solar wind is, I might be
I was gonna say-
talking more than I need.
SolarWind is monitoring software that big organizations use to monitor their server equipment, their computer infrastructure. It's a common
Brand name, okay.
and their security got compromised.
Is it like Norton or something like that?
Norton's antivirus.
Okay.
This is
SolarWind.
This is software that looks at your technology.
But SCADA uses solar wind, doesn't it?
No.
A little bit?
No.
Okay, I'm incorrect.
Yeah, we don't have any SolarWinds in our.
We don't. No, I know that.
And to say that the security was compromised, that's absolutely true, but the scale is unprecedented. I mean, they hacked the Defense Department. They hacked all these federal
right.
agencies.
Oh,
It
that,
was,
okay.
Yeah.
That one, I know what you're talking about.
So
now.
just in terms of how much is built on top of different systems, whether it's software or whether it's an actual product that was made in some other country, that we're running into those issues constantly.
And that's why, so we also air gap our system from the IT system network, so you can't get there from here, so to speak, from the SCADA network.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty typically the power industry standard is to separate those two as much as possible. Yes, you can logically separate them, the computer can deal with that, and I'll look over to John for at least a half a nod. That it can be done, I don't know how to do it, but we typically physically separate.
Is the water separated as well?
Water has its own set of security protocols that we go through to connect into our treatment plants, but we're not so-called air gapped like the same way.
Because I heard this morning on the news that someone hacked into the
Yes.
Florida.
Georgia,
Florida,
Atlanta, something like that. Anyway, they got in there and messed with a chlorine feed system. And, but it's not clear to me on the security that particular agency had in place.
Yeah.
But that notification went out to all of our treatment plant operators and our treatment plant crews, and we are double verifying our security with our electrical technicians.
Oh, good.
And this is only the beginning.
It's crazy.
So in inventory, what I'm seeing is that certain things are disappearing, or when you need them just in time, they're not even there.
Yeah.
Backlogs about 6 months sometimes, price increases of 10%. So, I'd love to make 10% on money.
Yeah. You know, and
buy it up front.
in the case of Bowman, it's fortunate. We have, the Hydro family is it's kind of a small world, right? So when something happens, we share equipment across each other, and so some of the equipment restocking is not ours, and we'll slide it back over into the inventory of the agency that we borrowed it from, and so that's the only way you can survive on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That you can only have so much inventory around. So.
I have a question about the poles. Restocking, you said we went through our entire inventory of poles. Do you find certain poles that break more often than others, or that are much more prone to snapping or breaking?
So, as I mentioned, we typically break maybe one pole a year, so we haven't, the data's just not there to really trend it. This was an exceptional event, and I'd say there are plenty of years that we don't break any.
Yeah.
And so no, we haven't been able to trend that. I'd love to, and we've absolutely kept track of which ones broke, what broke. It'll help certainly guide our veg management plan. All of the trees that fell through these were outside of our right-of-ways. And so and they were green is the other thing. They were not trees that we would have picked to go deal with. So it's
Just a freak thing.
it was an
Freak
exceptional
thing,
event.
Yeah.
So the maintenance stuff, I think we talked about storm, we were restocking. We're having some problems with the capacitor bank at the Columbia North Powerhouse. That controls the quality of the power that comes out of the powerhouse. It's nearing the end of its useful life, and we're going to have to replace that in the next year or two. We're working on a cost estimate. I'll jump to your next question, or anticipate it. I don't have a cost estimate of that yet, as to what that's going to look like. we have an engineer reviewing options, and they'll let us know what it's gonna look
And
like.
we really do need to look at these smaller, lower producing plants, and just see, does it make sense to keep dumping money into them?
Yeah, that's something we can absolutely look at. Let's see, so we talked about a little bit about the balanced plant controller at Dutch Flat already. We've been spending a tremendous amount of time dealing with the new insurance company and their requests and requirements, and that's been a heavy lift for us. We're working our way through that. Fortunately, the comments that they brought back were all fairly minor. I think Greg also mentioned our deductibles dropping significantly. We went from $5 million at Chicago Park Powerhouse to $300,000 or $500,000. So order of magnitude drop in our deductible out there based on the data that we were able to show. And I think that speaks volumes to our maintenance program. We are doing a good job. Our paperwork is a bit lacking, but I'm confident the CMMS will take care of that issue, and the next time around we'll be able to. Sure, you want to see this data set right there? We'll be able to give it to them immediately. The other, I guess, the big issue here is fire detection at some of the powerhouses. We don't have fire detection at a number of the smaller powerhouses, so they'd like us to install systems. They'll be fairly rudimentary. There'll be a smoke detector hooked up to an auto dialer that calls somebody if it detects smoke. These aren't significant systems that we're
So they're not asking for a sprinkler system?
Nope, they're just talking detection. There's really not a lot to burn in the powerhouses. There's a lot of steel and a lot of concrete. And so if something goes wrong, and they protect themselves generally, right? So they'll see that it's having a problem and shut down. They just want to know. So we'll see how that goes. And then I mentioned earlier, we had a hard time getting the standby generator at Comey South, but Scotts Flat is online. So whenever the powerhouse trips offline, the emergency generator there will kick on and keep the water flowing, make sure that everything's protected for the downstream water deliveries. So.
How long will that generator? How big is the generator, and how long will it go without servicing?
So it's 5 days worth of fuel I think we put out there, and so it'll run for quite a while. I don't remember how big it is. It's not a whole lot of load. It's just dealing with the lights and critical backup systems. So it's not very large, and there's a significant propane tank that sits down there at the bottom of the hill right now. So.
Do we have standby generators at all of our powerhouses now?
So, Bowman, yes, we put together a scheme of how we want to deal with the standby generators with the PSPS. So some of them are permanent, some of them are portable, and we move them where they're needed. Because what the powerhouses can do, especially with the balanced plant controllers, so when PG&E shuts off the transmission system, the powerhouses will stand back and just sit there and idle. So they'll continue to run, so they don't necessarily need a standby generator. Scotts Flat's not capable of that. It's just too small. It's not a function built into the smaller powerhouses. So no, we don't have standby generators everywhere.
The Combi and the Scott, do they have standby generators or not?
So Combi South will soon. That's the one that we're waiting to come in, and then Combi North, no. We've decided that we believe we can get by on the battery banks that are out there.
Are they portable? The smaller plants are portable generators?
No, Scotts Flat and Combi have permanent generators installed. At this point. Previously, we've been using the portable generators. So. All right, so switching over to the more administrative side, we have a CalISO meter that has gone bad, and so that is an incredible coordination event. CalISO is the California Independent System Operator. They're the ones that say how much power you can make and how much power you've made. The meters don't look a whole lot different from the one outside your house on the pole, but they're a whole lot more complicated from the standpoint of you have to be able to log into them remotely. CalISO has to be able to see what's going on, and they have to be able to make programming changes at any time, and one of ours just died.
Is this at all of our plants, or which one is this one?
So that's the Chicago Park. We lost one of the three, so we have a main, a backup, and an auxiliary meter at some of these powerhouses. So we lost the main meter, the backup's still functional, and so we're still generating. but it has to be replaced. And so we're working our way through that. We did our annual dam safety training. We got that through the ASDSO, Association of State Dam Safety Officials. They offered an annual training online, and so we put all of our staff through that, which was great. The other, the Rawlins Powerhouse, CalISO has said that they're going to go through and update all of their generator models. So they have a computer model that says what each generator can do, how fast it works, and so they've got to update that. So as part of that, we're required to provide some testing information to them, so we're working on that. And then the other bullet point there is that we sent out the request for proposals for our 5-year FERC-mandated Part 12B independent consultant review. And so what that is every 5 years, FERC requires you to bring in an engineer or a team of engineers to review all of your FERC-regulated dams. And it's a top-to-bottom exercise. They go through everything, all of your records, all of your previous operation, all of everything. It's a significant effort. You'll hear more about it because it will come to the board. The contract I'm expecting will be on the order of $350,000 to $400,000 for this review. So the board will need to approve that here in the coming months.
To put it through the formal bidding process then?
Yes, absolutely.
To notice in the papers and all of that, not just our select people that we offer?
No, so we've issued it to 7 consultants. It's a very select group of people that can do this. FERC has to review and approve your independent consultant. So a local engineering firm just can't do this job.
So does FERC submit a list of qualified people that
Yes,
you selected?
they have a list. Generally, you can go off that list, but then they have to review that person's.
So we'll be within that list?
Yes, yeah. So, but we did narrow it down to a subset of consultants.
That are all on that list?
That are on that list, yes. So that'll be coming to the board here in the next month or two, and then we have a whole bunch of NERC evidence reporting, so the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, we have to report to them regularly about what happens.
At every plant?
No, only at our NERC registered plants, so Dutch Flat and Chicago Park, Dutch Flat number 2. And then before I close, I did want to highlight a recent development on our snow fox. And what this is real-time snow measurement. And it's not just snow depth, it's snow water equivalent that we're getting out of there. We're on the leading edge of this thing and getting it to work. It's been studied and is in use around, but there aren't a whole lot of other agencies that are using this data, and we're starting to see the data start to roll in from it. So you can see this is a couple of recent, we had a month or so there, and you can see that recent storm and what it did to the snow water equivalent in the snow. It is a tremendous amount of data that comes in, and we're struggling with processing that data. I'm not sure what cosmic ray neutrons are and how it processes all of that, but that's what we're looking at. And so what this will do is give us much more real-time information on what the snow conditions are like, as opposed to the monthly snow surveys.
Is this a piece of equipment we purchased and installed at Jackson Meadows?
It's near Jackson Meadows. We don't want to give away the
Yeah,
exact
no, that's
location,
fine.
but it's in the area.
How much did it cost? When did we buy it?
Bought it a year or two ago. It's been a couple of years that we tested it at the Hydro headquarters last year, and then moved it out in the field this summer. I don't remember the exact equipment cost off the top of my head. I can get that number.
I don't remember seeing it come across. That's interesting.
It was in the budget as a line item. Like I said, it wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago.
Seems like it's a pretty spendy piece of equipment, though, I would think, if it's such cutting edge technology. Like Apple Watches or something.
Well, what's spendy? I think, it certainly wasn't you or I that are gonna go out and buy it, but, for the value of data that it provides and for the safety of not sending people out there,
You should be able to save in staffing.
I think it'll provide more information as we talk about, do we declare a drought? How does this look? What does this look like?
Wow.
Now, there's gonna need to be some calibration between this type of equipment and the old snow surveys, and how do these two work together? And so I think we're still a little ways away from moving away that sort of stuff, but I think this is the next step towards real-time measurement.
So, I mean, two things give you up to 30 days head, notice on what's going on. And so the last trend is those little green dots, that shows the increased water capacity?
But the yellow line is the SWE, I can't,
What does SWE stand for?
snow water equivalent.
The water equivalent is the yellow line, or it's at the green?
Green,
Data
1
points,
hour
huh, Dan?
SWE, 6 hour SWE, 24 hour SWE, so it's 24 hours. No
So
worries.
it's the running measurement of the snow water equivalent. So as the data kind of bounces around, it normalizes that data.
Not, did you say it's a predictive model though, is that what you're implying?
No, it looks back, right?
This is looking back, but it
Only
can
looking
feed into
back.
a predictive model, right? So if we know how much snow we have, middle of the month, we can start talking about, well, we got X number of inches of snow water equivalent out of that storm. We've got a data point between our manual read.
Oh, there you go.
Can you use that at, say, well, it's not at English Meadow, to show how much water content that the restoration project is doing?
Yeah, that's a different measurement, but we are doing that sort of stuff where they'll go out and gauge the stream, and they can combine it with this data to determine how much snow came down, and how much is coming out. But that's in tandem with other data.
Gotcha.
I'm not talking, I
Okay.
didn't have a back.
Yeah, you got it all.
I rolled.
So quick check-in.
Thank you.
Do we need a quick 5-minute break?
I do.
Yes, okay. So we'll get out of here by noon. Mine should be pretty quick, but let's take 5 minutes, quick break, and we'll come right back at, what? Well, let's say
5 minutes.
11:30. We'll round it a little bit. Okay?
Okay,
That's
sounds good.
3.5.
we live? We need one of those Hollywood signs where they. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are on our last item, and thank you for the little break there. We'll get to it. We should wrap this up before noon. Last item, item 7, is the Operations Department Activities Report. And much like Kian, we have a mix of activities along with key performance indicators. I'll take over the little clicker here, I think. Or not.
Oh.
Or you guys can just hit the next slide for me if you'd like. Maybe that's easier. Good.
We have a bigger problem.
That's because John left the room, so
I know,
the
exactly.
computer's acting up.
The treated water oil.
There we go. Okay, so we'll start off with our activities report. So our distribution crews are dealing with an outage on the South Yuba Canal, and I have some pictures here. Well, here, let me get right to it. So the South Yuba Canal, during that same wind event that Kian was discussing, also suffered a lot of damage with some major pine trees falling down on the facility. And this is no small event. Look at the size of the timbers that those trees just blow right through. And there's the hole that's left behind. And that's one of the main supplies to the county. And
Was that full when it happened?
What's that?
Was it flowing when it happened?
It was flowing when it happened. PG&E has some automated systems on there that tell them when a failure like this occurs, and they're able to shut the system down fairly quickly
Will we
to prevent
inherit?
a lot of washout. We will be getting that information and that equipment, yes, when we take this over. But I think the thing I wanted to focus on here as well is PG&E was quick to respond, and that's great. We also sent our own maintenance crews up there to mirror and shadow them to see how these kind of repairs take place, so that we're prepared when this becomes ours. Now, that particular damage, they jumped on it, and they had the repairs done within a matter of, I think it was 2 or 3 days. Unfortunately, the snow came in right behind it. They shut the canal down, and now it has 4 feet of snow in it, and we haven't got it back running yet. They're still trying to shovel snow out.
Why did they shut it down?
So normally in a snow event, they put 20 to 30 CFS in there to float the snow and push it through the system. But because this storm came with a high wind event as well as snow, they thought it best to shut down the canal because they were afraid of another tree going down through it.
PS.
So it was a risk decision that they made.
So this goes back to my original confusion about a water distribution operator or a water system operator. This is above Scotts Flat, right? This is
Correct, yeah, correct.
It's above, but water's
So
handling it.
operationally, like sending the water down and monitoring it and all of that is gonna happen through Hydroelectric department. When something breaks on it, this department's maintenance crews are gonna go fix it.
Oh, those are the maintenance people.
Those
you
are
were
the 2
saying.
maintenance folks that we've hired in order to shadow and make sure that they understand what PG&E's doing.
And
So
are
this
your
one-
maintenance people charging Hydro for their time?
I can't answer that.
It's not a hydro facility, it's a,
Oh, not yet.
But it's above Rollins and Deer Creek, and Scotts and, it's over
We'll
Watershed.
actually expand on that discussion when the facility becomes ours, but
Okay.
PG&E's managing it.
So right now, water's paying for the staff to maintain.
this is one facility that's a bit of an anomaly, right? Because we've always said, rightfully so, that everything from Deer Creek Park up is
Hydro, yeah.
This one's kind of a hybrid, and so we probably need to discuss that when it becomes ours and how we're gonna divvy out those funds and charge what accounts accordingly.
Right.
This is more lower division,
No, it's upper.
Well,
It's
Clearly
upper-
upper division.
part to part.
Well, here's the deal, is you have the Deer Creek Powerhouse, right? So this upper section is supplying the powerhouse, right? So to me, that's kind of a hydro function. I think that's partly why hydro is doing the operation. However, there is a ton of infrastructure there to maintain, and it probably would be a real struggle for hydro to maintain the 19 miles, so we're gonna lean on these guys up here in our water maintenance department to help out there.
Until we drill it.
Until we get a tunnel.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we have our Bear Valley facility up there to hold equipment for if and when we need to utilize it.
Right. It seems like it's a it should be a hydro thing,
Well,
and the maintenance people should be in hydro, not
That's
hot water.
we haven't really crossed that bridge yet.
Well, we've hired them, and they're on
They're
board.
in maintenance. They're in maintenance.
And water, yeah, okay. We'll continue to talk.
We will have more discussion, I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up against. So we're very fortunate that the district invested, I don't remember how many millions, but we put in a backup pump station that allows us to pump water from the outlet of Scotts Flat back up into the Cascade system, and we're relying on that pump now because of this outage. Very critical piece of infrastructure, and I'm glad we got it put in. It comes very handy. The one thing I will say, though, is it's not cheap to run. It's roughly $1,200 to $1,500 a day in diesel fuel.
Wow.
So we're leaning on PG&E pretty heavily to hurry up and get this fixed.
Can we charge that extra?
We can't. We do have a coordinated operating agreement that talks about these sorts of things, and basically we can't go back to PG&E for any damages or payment.
But how about to the customer?
To the customer, we have a little bit of funds in our budget every year to cover roughly 2 weeks of operations of this facility, because we know PG&E has outages. So we pulled a little bit of that into our budget, but if it gets too far beyond, then yeah, we're starting to.
If you have to go a couple months, the supply is enough?
Oh,
to
yeah.
meet demand?
Water-wise, we're
Yeah.
fine, because you have all Scotts Flat to rely on.
Cost of it.
It's the cost that becomes the issue.
Right, understood.
Wow.
Okay, so our distribution operators have also completed their spillway checks. Basically, they walk the canals and then they patrol the spillways along the canals, take pictures and put them into the files, document how much water we've flowed into these spillways. And the reason we do that is if you don't provide proof that you've utilized these channels, you may lose the ability to use them in the future. So documentation is very important. We do that every year.
Make sure all the leaves are out of it.
That too, and make sure no one's built a house in it. I mean, we run into all kinds of crazy things. System-wide flushing of the treated water system is almost complete. That, again, is an annual event that we do. Our backflow crews have completed their inspections of 1,813 individual devices. It's pretty impressive. Of that number, they repaired 220, so they were busy crews, and we do that every year. So
Is that our expense, or is that the customer's expense?
it is. So if you have a backflow device, you pay a little extra on your monthly bill as a customer, and it funds these guys' work. But once we put in that device, it's now ours to maintain forever, and that's what their fee pays.
And does that little bit cover what it costs us to do it?
Great question, and something we're going to analyze as part of this schedule.
Very good.
Yep. Water treatment crews, production in January is 147 million gallons. We continue our sampling program. We're down to sampling crypto in the Combi-Ophir system. We were required to sample for cryptosporidium at all the treatment plants. We passed all of that. We had very low numbers, which was great news, but the state came back and said, we'd like you to sample your backup supply. So that's what we're doing. We're sampling our backup canal system. And so far, so good news. So
Back to the treated water production?
Yeah.
Do you have since this is the first meeting of the year, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do we know how much water we treated last year? Do we have it 2020?
they don't have it on these slides, but I can get that for you. Sure, yeah. Let's see, we're also working on our annual water system state report. So every year, the state reaches out to us and asks us to provide them a bunch of information on our public water systems. So we do that, we're working on that. We're also supplying the data for the Consumer Confidence Report, which is also known as the Annual Water Quality Report. That should be coming out in the next couple of months. The Watershed Sanitary Survey that we mentioned earlier, the treatment crews are putting that data together, and then they're also providing the information that will be populating the Urban Water Management Plan. We're working on that. I'm sad to report this one. Our NID Water Lab is closing. So we've always had the capability of performing our own bacteriological sampling here at the district. It's been a great convenience and a great tool to have in our back pocket. We do a water line repair. We can sample it right away, send it to our own lab. The turnaround time's really quick. However, unfortunately, the regulations of the state have changed. They're now moving to a much more intensive regulatory program for these ELAP labs, and it makes it no longer financially feasible to run that lab at NID anymore.
It was previously ELAB certified?
It was, yes.
What changed?
They're going to what's the name of it, PNIP standard. Anyway, it's a third-party standard and a bunch of new regulations that you have to meet, and the cost to do so. You have to bring in a third party to do your inspections. And we were already on the edge of making the lab pan out financially. Now it's just become evident that if we farm this out to one of the local labs here in town, it's actually cheaper with the new regulations for us to farm it out.
What happened to that staff?
So the staff, the treatment plant operators were performing the lab function as a side to their job. It was in their job description to have lab certification.
Where was it located?
North Auburn
Oh.
Treatment Plant. So it's a bummer. I liked having control of our own systems and being able to do it as quickly as we want to, but we've worked out an agreement with one of the local labs, and strangely enough, the local lab doing it is also doing it for PCWA, so they're experienced in it.
Which lab is it?
Cramner
Cramner.
Engineering, yeah. So we'll see. We've done the switch starting this month. We'll see how it goes.
Too bad.
It is a bummer. And then we are coordinating with maintenance on tank cleanings. It's that time of year. Water demand is low. We drain the tanks, get in there, inspect them, do all that good stuff. Water resources, we're working on water rights. I think I already reported this out, and maybe it went to the full board, but we received credit on our petition fees. So last year we got charged an extra fee. We sent in a petition for reconsideration, and we were granted that, which saved us a ton of money, which is great. We are now working on our usage reports for last year, so that reporting will be due in the next month or two. Those guys are also updating the ag and urban water management plans with the amount of demand and usage we've had over the last 5-year window. And we're going to continue on our snow surveys to better forecast our availability for the summer.
Is that Taurus Group?
Yes.
Okay.
Customer service. So we have reached the 1-year mark for having online bill payment, and this is pretty impressive. We've had 28,000 transactions through online bill payment. That's impressive, through payment. We've done over $3.7 million in transactions, and we have 2,665 customers using the paperless option.
Do we still have the fee? I mean, are they
Still
doing
have
it
the
even
fee,
with
yeah.
the fee? It's like $3 or something?
$3, yeah, it's $3.75, I think, something like that. And then the LIRA, this is the discounted rate on our fixed fee. We have 52 customers that are utilizing that, at least in the month of January. So that tends to ebb and flow, but just enough informational update, that's how many used it. As I mentioned earlier, we're still working on updating the fee schedules. We hope to have some of those updates to the Water Committee here soon. And then we are waiting on the ag mailing, as I mentioned earlier, but with the new water supply update, we will be sending those out probably the end of this week. Our electrical departments have been busy. They replaced the MAG 3, one pump at the MAG 3 pump station. It was just worn out, shot.
Magnolia
3, so it pumps out of below Combi Reservoir up into the MAG 3 canal, which supplies the Lake of the Pines treatment plant and all the raw water customers along that path.
That's a pretty big pump station there.
It's decent size. It's not a ton of lift, so, but the volume's pretty high in the summer.
Is it on that road that if you go to Combi and then it's to the north there? Is that?
So if you all have visited the pipeline job out there,
Yeah.
maybe you all have, I'm not sure if you've been out there yet, but it's on that canal section where the pipeline is, right next to the dam. We've done firmware updates for all the SCADA systems and PLCs. Radio tower updates have been complete. We integrated the Jayhawk pump station. So before that pump station was an island of its own, we couldn't communicate with it, but our electrical crews have gone in and installed PLCs, and now we can communicate. It's fully automated, which is pretty cool.
Where's Jayhawk?
Lake Wildwood. And then the Smartsville meter has been replaced, so before, the Smartsville water treatment plant has a flow of, at times, somewhere around 5 gallons per minute. It's only 44 connections. So it's hard to find a meter that covers the range it's operating in. So they went in and replaced the meter with one that can go down to that finer level of measurement. And so we should hope to get better, more accurate numbers out of that facility.
5 gallons a minute to serve 44 houses?
In the middle of the night, people aren't using a lot
right.
of water.
So what's the range? I mean, what's the max?
So the plant can do, 64 gallons a minute, I think it is. Generally speaking, in the summer months, we're somewhere in that 30 gallons per minute range. That's what we run the plant at.
So the backbone extension program would eliminate that treatment plant?
No, the backbone extension program would eliminate, potentially contribute to Lake Wildwood and not Smartsville.
It wouldn't be extended.
We've investigated that. There's a potential for it, but it's a huge expense, and for only 44 customers, I'm not sure that it pencils right now.
Yeah.
In fact, we have tried to donate that treatment plant to locals, and nobody's interested in taking it. So it's a tough one.
Is the package plant, is it flocculation,
It's
sedimentation, or?
a conventional treatment plant, yeah. Standard flocculation, sedimentation, filtration.
Yeah.
But we're obligated to serve it by the RCO. That's from the Excelsior RCO.
Do we have a dedicated operator out there, or is it how?
No, our operators split up these facilities, so that particular operator on any given day will be responsible for Lake Wildwood and Smartsville, and at times, if we're short-staffed, even George. So we run them as tightly as we can.
Have we looked at, contracting that out and just having a contractor run that plant and just?
I believe the costs would be even higher, because our crews are pretty efficient, and we do have a level of automation at that plant, which means we don't have to spend a lot of staff time there, and we can monitor remotely.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So you're not unhappy with it?
I'm not unhappy with it, but I will tell you, it's some of the more challenging water to treat.
What's the main issues with?
It goes through miles and miles of little tiny open ditches, through pasture land. It requires additional log treatment of removal because of the influence on wastewater facilities up above. It's just, there's a lot of challenges with it, but we've gotten it to the point where we're pretty good at running it, and so we continue to roll on.
Does it have effluent violations or anything?
No, it did have some DBP, MCLs, this was, 10, 15 years ago. We've fixed all of that, changed the disinfectant, and, it seems to be doing fine. Yeah. We removed the Lake Wildwood lime silo, that was a big step. Wiring at Scott's Flat Campgrounds, we've gone through and updated most of that. Some of those campgrounds were kind of scary in the wiring department, with wires coming out to the fuse boxes, and it was a mess, but it's much cleaner now. And then we have installed automation and telemetry at the pressure regulating station on Rattlesnake. So that also gives us eyes on what's happening in the distribution system in real time. Pretty cool stuff.
I have a question about Lake Wildwood.
Yes.
We budgeted to have some work done out there this year. How's that going? What's the extent of that? What are we doing out there right now?
Good question. We are working with engineering currently to start getting RFPs, RFQs, whatever we need to do to start getting quotes going on getting the clarifier repairs done. And then some of the other items that are in that list to be improved upon are happening as a project through engineering. So that's starting to get around.
So most of that work is gonna be contracted out?
Yes, I would imagine.
As one comprehensive contractor?
I don't know about that. Like, for instance, the clarifier repairs are very specific, and the contractor who put those in originally still exists today. So I'm anxious to reach out to them and see if this is maybe a sole source item. These are all custom parts. And so if they have the history on it and the plans and all of that, it might potentially be one of those sole sources.
How old are those clarifiers?
Gosh, that particular one is going to be early 70s. It's the original clarifier.
And is it the mechanisms that are broken, or is it structural problems?
It's the bearing on the main mixer shaft has spun, and we welded it to make it work, to get us through. And Lord only knows how long that parts at a minimum, but really we just need to fix it right.
Yeah.
Get the original builders in here, do it right,
Yeah.
and then we're guaranteed for a little more time.
50 years isn't too bad.
That's not too bad.
That's really good.
So, is that all in the HDR report of 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about if they went into that level of detail on the clarifiers, but yeah, those are some of the items they point out.
I thought we had done most of those.
There's a lot of other things like the drying pond repairs, that still has yet to be completed. That report, trash rack on the canal, there's a few other things listed there that we haven't completely tackled yet, and I think those are the things that we'll get done through engineering.
Yeah, those are on the list this year. I think all of the things on that fix-it list were in that.
Yes.
And then
In the
separate
HDR
from the upgrade.
This is, the clarifier is kind of a side of that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So far.
We ran into the clarifier issues, I think it was shortly after the HDR report came out, so it doesn't have the level of detail on the repairs needed on the clarifier. That's why it's kind of a separate thing. But we're gonna get it. Okay, so here's my KPIs. Boy, this is hard to see on this screen, I apologize. So at the top, this is the new treated water accounts. Let me describe a little bit of this to you. So on the right, you can see here's each year, how many total new accounts we've had. And then I tried to color code it so that it would stand out. So 2020 is in black, which is very evident. 2021 is in red, which is kind of hard to see. But essentially what you can see is over the last few years, we've had, 89, 50, 68, 86, 70, 68, and 3. So we're kind of fairly steady in how many new accounts we add every year for our treated water customers. Raw water sales?
And that has a capacity charge?
Correct, yes. All new accounts are subject to capacity fees and connection fees. New raw water sales in miners inches. So the same thing applies here as far as the color coding. The increases for last year are in black. For 2021, they would be in red, but there's been 0 so far, so I didn't have anything to put in there. But you can see, the one part I wanted to highlight here is that. That is all fall and winter water. We have had demand for that this last year like I have never seen. And you might think that's good, and we're here to provide water, and I get it, but it really hurts our carryover numbers and our projections for the summer deliveries when we're sending water out in the middle of winter when we should be collecting it instead of sending it out.
And so not all of these are permanent customers. I mean,
They are, well, depends on your outlook. Some may say that irrigation season water is only year by year. However, generally speaking, everybody renews their water every year, so yes, they're permanent customers.
So that's over 1,000 acre feet.
Yes, see on the right-hand side, I put the acre foot
Yeah.
here for each, yes. Yep.
So, I guess my question would be, during the 14-15 drought, there was no new hookups.
Correct.
When would you come to us and say, we recommend no more hookups?
So that would be in that earlier discussion we had today.
Yeah.
If our forecast showed that we were in, I believe it's the stage 3 drought, maybe a 4, we would come to you and say, hey, per our drought contingency plan, we will do no new hookups.
Not 2,
Not
or 3. Oh, wait, okay.
Stage 1 is 10% voluntary,
Yeah.
stage 2 is 20% mandatory, but we do allow limited connections. I
Right.
think we limit them to like 1 miner's inch.
Okay,
But all of that's about to change with the new state regulation and the drought contingency plan. We'll come to you guys with that.
You think?
so this big spike in October,
Yeah.
these are brand new customers that said, give us a box, we want to apply for NIC water.
Potentially, probably not. Really what it is there were existing, irrigation season water customers who only got water from April through October, and then they called us up in October and said, I want winter and fall water. It was a year.
Oh, I see, that's right, 'cause like we're 2 customers, if we have, we're 2 customers.
It was so dry that
Yeah,
the pastures were drying
yeah.
up.
And you know, I would like to say that, and I agree with you 100%, but if you look at last year's, it's very hard to see. The year before that, so 2019, that number was up there too. So it seems to be kind of an ongoing pattern of that.
But it was a dry year also.
It was a bit dry. So
Yeah.
fall water seems to be more and more in demand. And you're right, I mean, it seems to be related to the overall climate. It just seems to be dry and warm in the fall anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, raw water sales changes. You had a question about this earlier in this meeting, Director Peters, and this kind of shows you that during the 2020 year, we had more reductions than we did increases. So these are customers who are existing customers. Did they add or decrease? Well, in 2020, the overall average was to cut, and we actually cut, 1,214 acre feet.
Miner's inch. Or
That's
these are acre
acre
feet, and this is miner's inch.
So the column on the left is miner's inches, but the total here is
Oh, I
acre feet for the year.
Oh, I see. These units make me crazy.
And did they reduce or did they just eliminate our service?
Well, we would count both. So basically, it's any change in their current service we reflected on.
Since it's year to year, they're no longer a customer until, and
Well,
down in my neck of the woods, they always say, once you cut off, you never get it back, and so.
That's generally true. However, during the drought, we did encourage folks to cut back, and we told them, if you cut back, we'll get you back to your original allotment if you're willing to cut. We got good response on that. So if we get into another drought scenario, that's in the drought contingency plan now, that we will
but
try to.
during that period, they didn't get charged for not using that water, which put us into a financial hardship.
That's correct. That's something else that has changed, is that the new drought contingency plan has a change in the pricing structure to make up for the lost revenue from reduction in sales. I hope we don't have.
Yeah.
Okay, scheduled treated water outages. This is I'm starting to get too many years on there. Yeah. A lot of colors. But what it does show you is there is a definite trend, and the trend is that we generally do a lot of repairs on the treated water system in the summer months. The winter months are generally quiet, which makes sense. It's a low demand period, and the weather usually is pretty terrible. But I will say our maintenance crews this last few months have just been busy. Starting in December, they did a bunch, what is that, like 21, 22 repairs. And then in January, again, they did, 14 repairs. So they've been busy.
And did that actually keep water from going to people's homes?
Yes, so each one of these is an outage, which is a mailing to the customer, usually a block or two out from that point of, hey, you're gonna be without water such and such day. We're out there making repairs. What we do. Emergency treated water outages. These are outages where either you don't have the time to mail and you need to get in there and make the repairs in a hurry, or something that happens in the middle of the night and you just send the crews out and you get it done. Again, our maintenance crews the last 3 months have been very busy. I think some of these may have been very small repairs. There are times when it's only 2 or 3 customers that may be affected in an outage that we'll just declare an emergency, get it done, and notify those customers by knocking on their door instead of waiting the full 2 weeks, doing the mailing. And so that's generally reflected here. We did a bunch. When I say a bunch, it looks like a bunch on the graph, but keep in mind over here on this scale, that's only 8.
Yeah.
You know, so it looks like a lot, and it is for the norm, but not a huge amount when you consider we have, nearly 20,000 connections. Okay, scheduled raw water outages. Again, a very clear trend here that we do most of our work in the winter months, which makes sense. During the summer months, we just can't take these canals out. Too many people are relying on that water.
Are these days, or what is?
This is just outages. So for instance, this red column here is 12 outages. And they can vary in days. Some of them are gonna be quick, 1-day shots. Some of them will be 3 days, 4 days. Generally speaking, they're never over a week. We can, but we try not to.
Yeah. What were they doing on Campo West Canal last week? It was, water was out for a week.
I don't know that one off the top of my head. Is that? Okay, there you go.
I'm sorry?
cleaning, so mucking out.
Oh, just cleaning it.
Pam gets to mail out all the outages, so
I
she
know.
knows them
Thank
all right
you,
off the top of her head.
You believe that all directors should be out in the ditch sometimes, mucking them out?
Well, that's gonna be a trap. Does that mean I have to go do it?
No, that includes you.
It's called hazard situation.
Okay, emergency raw water outages. This one's kind of funny. This is kudos. Because, somebody needs to mute it. Okay.
How did that happen?
All right. So anyway, the last 3 years, no emergency raw water outages, knock on wood. That's good news.
Wow.
Okay, I lost my control. Oh, I promised 12. Oh, it's 12 on the money. Last slide.
It's,
Okay, here is the amount of calls that we received into our customer service department. The purple line is our dispatch desk, which is generally water flow, raw water type irrigation system calls. And then the blue line is generally speaking treated water, however, they kind of share the calls if we have a flood, so it's kind of mixed anymore. But anyway, the grand total was 2,425 calls into the office that we answered and handled, and then 97 emails were covered in the month of January. I threw last year up here for comparison purposes, just to show you. We get a lot of calls, generally in the summer months, at the starting of irrigation season and the end of irrigation season, we're just inundated. But, yeah, lots and lots of calls.
are we tracking the nature of the call and also the tenure?
We don't get that specific as of yet, but we definitely track them. And based on who they come to, whether it's dispatch or customer service, kind of tells us the relationship of the calls. Most of the customer service calls are billing related, that type of thing. And most of the dispatch calls are water service, like my box is plugged, or I got a report of a leak on the canal system, things like that.
Is that a different number?
They all come to the switchboard downstairs, and then they distribute from there.
And they say this is a dispatch, this is a billing,
Yeah.
this is a...
Yeah, so they answer the initial call, and then they route it to where it belongs. And
So if I'm calling when I didn't have your number or something,
You have the main
does
number.
that count, do those count in these calls?
No, the only ones that get counted is if they're physically transferred from the switchboard to one of the extensions in customer service, it'll get counted as a customer service call, and vice versa. If it goes to the switchboard and gets routed to dispatch, it gets counted as a dispatch call.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of calls.
It is, and, I don't think I have previous, no. Unfortunately, we lost the reporting total for the first 3 months in, 2020, but John came on board and fixed this up, so we got the last half of the year. Anyway, that's a wrap for me, and I apologize, we're at 12:02.
Yeah.
12:03 just turned.
That's great.
Any other questions?
Not on the agenda, but how often, we'll take it up tomorrow, how often would you like to present to the WHO committee?
Well, that's a loaded question. Put us on the spot before
Let's
the
bring that up
official
tomorrow.
Well, think about it for tomorrow.
We
How-
have,
We have.
Yeah, what's the prudent number? The sweet spot.
It's a great question. I have
Well-
some thoughts, but
yeah,
Well, we don't wanna waste your
can we
time.
go ahead and close the meeting
let's
now?
close the meeting. Or do you want?
No.
We're done.
Don't you have public comment?
Oh, no public.